Yeah, so thank you very much for that, Steve. So I don't know if you can see that comment from Maria. It was already here when I started the live stream. It's in Portuguese. Do you hear me now, Rodrigo? You should be able to hear me now. I turned on my mic. Okay, Steve hears me. Good. But yeah, Maria left a comment. I'll just copy and paste in case you guys can't see it. I can read it. Okay, good, Rodrigo. Thank you. I can read it and I can understand the pieces. I don't know why she's saying no and no. Um, that's what's confusing me. So if you could translate that, that would be nice. But Steve, about one of your last short videos, can you explain explain to me, explain to me why NED plus TH can be pronounced as dental N plus dental D. I'd interpret it only as N plus TH. Okay, so that's a good question. Wait, hold on. Yeah, and so like opened right, that was in the video. So I don't know if anybody else teaches you guys this. If not, I'd be very, very surprised because you're not really learning like real English. You're not learning a lot of the important things that you need to understand better and to sound more natural if that's your goal. But okay, let's look at what's going on here. So we have N. Now with NED, the ending, like opened, right? We know that the E is silent, so that's the first step. We need to be clear. Everybody's on the same page. E is silent. There's no E there. Okay. So then we have the N. And what is the N? The N is normally up here, right? So present tense, right? Open. That's easy. We just go to the N, open. If we had the D, or the ED ending, then this is going to be the E is silent, and we say the ND. Yeah, Rodrigo, thank you. Because she's saying like no and no, and so it's like I don't know if she accidentally repeated no because it should be like no and yes. I don't know, but anyway, some missing commas, I think. Okay, so interesting. So I don't know if Maria is here, but yeah, it's okay. Thank you for the comment anyway. But yeah, back to the opened the. So we know that the E is silent, so we're gonna have N and D. Right now, if we fully clearly enunciate this, opened, opened, okay, and we don't normally clearly enunciate. So we might stop that D or hold that D, open, open, open. And it's going to sound like an N because the N and the D are in the same place. So if we need it to be clear, we can push out the D. That's always an option. But we don't normally need to do that because the context might be clear. If I say, what did you do? Like, oh, he knocked on the door. Oh, what did you do? Well, I opened it. Opened it. Well, I guess you can hear the D there. It's going to connect. So a lot of the times it's going to sort of pop up because of what's after it. But we have the TH in the. And we know, right, if we fully clearly enunciate opened the, that's what we're going to do. Opened the. That's not how we normally speak. If it were just an N, open the, okay. So now, and I'm just making sure everybody's on the same page. I'm sure you probably understand up to this part, Steve. But we want to lay all the pieces here. So when we have open and the, okay, we could clearly enunciate it. We could say open the, that's fine, right? No problem. But we don't normally do that. And in fact, the reason why the flat dental D or dental T version of the TH, the reason why that exists as a variation is because of this NTH combination. That's my theory. Because it's a lot easier and faster instead of going the to just go the, okay, and not actually produce a th, but that dental D is a replacement that we just interpret as a th because the dental T and D does not exist in English. So that allows us to speak faster, more easily. Open the door, open the door. Okay. But then when we have this D, opened the, okay? Now how does this work? And I explained that if it's right past tense, he opened the door, that you can just say he opened the door. Right? So it's like a dental N and a dental D. So we're going to the dental N because of the TH, which we would do even if it weren't past tense, right? If it's just open present tense, we're likely, again, we don't have to, but we're very likely to do the N here and then just pull off that TH as a dental D. When we have the past tense, we can do the same thing, right? The D, the actual real D that's supposed to be there in the past tense, can just disappear. Okay. Now, if the context isn't clear, then you can push out that D, opened the door, and then you have to do a regular N, a regular TH. But a lot of the times it's going to be very, very clear, right? So if I say, oh yeah, he knocked on the door, or he knocked, okay, so I opened the door. It's past tense, he knocked, I opened the door. So sometimes in pronunciation, we saw something like this before. Sometimes in the pronunciation, we're allowed to do certain things that might seem unclear, but if the context is clear, then it's fine, right? So let's see, can you know why, I want to make sure I covered everything here. Why the NED plus TH can be pronounced as dental F plus, I'd interpret it as, yeah, exactly. So again, normally the dental N plus dental D combination is because of N plus TH, voiced TH specifically. If it's voiceless, it's going to be a dental T, or possibly just a dental N, but we don't want to worry about that. But again, if the context is clear, we can infer that it's past tense, and you can just use the same exact pronunciation. So this is one of the things that makes real speech a little tricky, because it's good to know, what's like the full sound, what's the proper, enunciated, nice, clear, way to say this and this and this. But unfortunately, right, life would be easier if we just spoke that way, but we don't, right? We take little shortcuts in real speech to make it easier for us to speak, right? And we use tools like context and other things as natives. And so you guys, again, if your goal is not to sound native-like, you don't have to do that. But you should be aware of it so that when you're listening, you can better interpret what is happening. And so it's still important for you guys to learn these things. You don't have to speak that way unless you want to sound maybe a bit more natural. So, okay, Matthias. Hello, I think my problem is that I cannot differentiate a dental D and a dental D and a dental T. Yeah. Now many things make sense. Thanks. No problem, Steve. So Matthias, thank you for coming to the chat here. So this is anytime you can't differentiate between two sounds, this is an ear problem, right? And what's the solution for ear problems? Ear training. Ear training, what I tell you guys a lot. And in particular, there's many aspects or many different ways that you can train your ears for various things, whether it's rhythm, the stress, whatever it is. But here we're talking about two sounds. The best way to train your ability to recognize the difference between two sounds is, of course, minimal pairs. Now, I have not yet made a minimal pair lesson for the dental D versus the dental T. I'm pretty sure that's on my list, but that will come eventually. If a lot of people are interested in that, I can bump that up, maybe make it sooner. But otherwise, it's in my list and it will be coming. So, in the meantime, if you want, you can maybe try to find just example words on, say, forvo.com, where you look up words that end or that would have the dental D or dental T, which is only in TH words, voiced or voiceless TH words, as an alternative. Now on forvo.com, the speaker is probably going to say it very clearly, so you might not be able to find examples of the dental D or dental T because we don't even think that that exists in English. It's not part of our perception. It's just interpreted as a TH sound. So for this particular pair, you might not really find anything, and I'll have to make that for you. But normally you can go on forvo.com and say it's like a versus or something. You can find words that have a, words that have that are the same except the difference, and then just listen to them side by side, and that can help train your ears. So, okay, cool. Also, Matthias, he asked them, I drop the K, so it is more of he asked them, with the same STTH. I would struggle a lot. Is this a dental T or D, or is it the same sound? It's a good question. Yeah, so here we have an extra layer of difficulty, because we know that in the word asked, right, English, actual like natural real pronunciation, we generally don't like three consonant sounds together, right? Remember, we're based on sounds, not spelling here. But so we have the S sound, the K sound, and in asked, it's spelled ED, but it's a T sound because the E is silent and the K is voiceless, which makes it pronounced as a T, not a D. So asked, right? But that's kind of a mouthful. It's kind of skt, right? The K and the T clash. We don't like that. It's a little difficult to say. So if we're speaking normally and we don't need to enunciate for whatever reason, we're probably going to drop the middle sound. And this happens in many words, pretty much any word that has three consonant sounds together. Again, sounds, not letters. So instead of asked, we say asked. Asked. Sounds like asked, right? But then we have, after that, a TH sound. So how is that going to work? Well, you could say asked them, right? Get a little bit of a T there, and then say a regular TH. That's a nice, clear way to say it. That's possible. We will sometimes do that. But we know that commonly the TH becomes a dental T or a D. In this case, it's going to be a dental D because them is a voiced TH. Voiced TH. And again, this is an optional variation. The dental T and dental D is always an optional variation. In combinations like this, it's going to be the most common thing that happens. But you can technically say, always just say the TH or always just say the dental T or D, depending if it's voiced or voiceless, with the exception that there's a couple exceptions to that. And you guys are going to see that in one of the upcoming lessons, the extra practice for the voiceless TH sound. We don't tend to use the dental T or D for a TH at the end of a word unless it links to something like an N or whatever that would allow us to move into it. So it is a very common variation. You can use it especially at the front of a word. Very commonly, we also use it in the middle of words for TH. But at the end of a word, that's a little special. So anyway, that's in upcoming material. So don't worry about that now. For here, ask them. Ask them. So the T would be up here, which is the same place as the N, right? So really, if you're going from a T, a D, or an N, right, we know open the, right, we can go here. You can do the same thing with the T and the D. So if it's ask them, ask them. So what actually happens is that T disappears. And we might stop it to make it a little clearer. Ask them, instead of like ask them, ask them. So that stop will kind of make us hear, okay, there's a T there a little bit. Where if I don't do the T, and I just say ask them, right, that sounds like present tense. because I can still do that dental D on them either way at the start of the word. So we might rely on context, or we might stop the T just for a brief moment to kind of let the listener know, oh, there's a little stop there. And we don't consciously think of this, but oh, there's a little stop there. It's probably past tense. Asked them. He asked them yesterday. Asked them yesterday, right? But if we're speaking really quick, we might completely drop the stop also, and then it's just context. So if I say he asked them yesterday, yesterday we know is past tense. So the answer there, aside from pushing out the T to more clearly enunciate it, you can do a little stop there, or you can just drop the T completely if the context is clear. So we have another context dependent pronunciation. And I know sometimes these details. I'm glad a lot of people are asking questions based on some of these shorts that I've made, which of course were based on other questions. So this gives me more material. But I'm glad people are asking about this because, aside from the fact that it's important, I lost my thought. Yep, just disappeared. I'll come back to it. Sometimes that happens, right? Things just disappear. You're welcome, Matthias. Notice I just said Matthias. That TH in the middle, right? Because your name, I'm sure you probably pronounce it a little differently. It's probably like maybe Matthias or Matthias, or I don't know if you have a TH. But we can do Matthias, Matthias, or Matthias with a dental T. Matthias, even though it's in the middle of the word, that's fine. Anyway, Steve, does the word cute mean no S, right? Because it's does already has the S, so we don't add the S again. Remember, only one change to the verb, usually. Does the word cute mean beautiful or pretty? I saw some cases that cute haven't seemed to mean what's on dictionary. Okay, so I saw some cases where, or in which, but where cute seemed to mean something different than what's in the dictionary. Okay, so you pronounce it with a T, yeah. Good. Anyway, so interesting. Well, I mean, I guess I don't know which dictionary you're using. Maybe it's not a very good one. So yeah, cute. One really important concept in English, and I'm sure many languages do this, but it's something that, of course, you should know about in English. But in English, in particular, we have lots of words for the degrees of something. Okay, meaning like more or less, more positive, more negative. So, for example, if I say cute, say I see a cat and I say, oh, it's cute. Now, there's some context specific usages. Like I mean, you could say a cat is beautiful. Like, oh, that's like an amazing looking cat. We probably wouldn't say a cat is pretty. But cute is a very commonly used word for animals in particular. So that's going to have a high frequency there. But just the general meaning of cute, there's like if something is cute, it's like okay, well, it's not directly related to beautiful or pretty, but it's like oh, that's like okay, let's do this in the context of say people. Right. So if a guy sees a girl or a girl sees a guy, it could be both ways. It doesn't matter. If that one person looks at the other person and they seem visually interesting, maybe the face or whatever. Okay, it's yeah, the person's cute. I like the way they look. They're cute. It's kind of like a small word, right? Where if someone is pretty, right, that might sound maybe a little bit stronger, just a little bit stronger. Cute and pretty in this context are pretty much interchangeable. Beautiful sounds like a stronger word. Okay, so there's like it's pretty, or someone is pretty, and then someone is beautiful. Like, wow, that's beautiful, right? And then of course we can add other words in between. So I can say like kind of pretty. So it's like a little bit, like, oh yeah, she's kind of pretty, or he's kind of, well, he and pretty, he and handsome. We would change pretty to handsome for males, but anyway, um, or I could say really pretty, right? So it's like kind of exactly a little more, right? Or more. Um, so we have lots and lots of words in English for the degrees of things, whether that's changing the exact word and or using adjectives, more or less around that word, if that makes sense. And this allows us very fine control to express exactly what we want to say. Where I know in some languages, it's not that you can't say things. I mean, obviously, all languages are perfectly capable of expressing things in whatever way that language does. Um, but some languages may not have, certain um, tools to get super, super granular in a simple way like English does. If I say it's cool, it's very cool, it's kind of cool. Um, where some languages may just have like, okay, it's cool, it's not cool, whatever. But it doesn't matter. And then maybe there's another way to make it more or less compared to English. So anyway, doesn't matter. So again, yeah, cute doesn't really mean the same as beautiful necessarily. Depending on the context, it could be a related word. Like someone's cute, someone's beautiful. Beautiful sounds stronger. Cute and pretty, again, they're a little bit closer, but it really depends on the context. Context is important. So anyway, any other questions? Questions. And there was a thing about a thing. Open. I've been doing research on placement. I know a lot of you are interested in that because I asked about it. I have 40 votes, and 83% of them say that they want to see that lesson. So I really haven't come to a complete conclusion on placement yet. But if you guys want to talk about that, we can. Difference between actually and really. Yeah, that's a really good question, especially for Spanish speakers and probably also Portuguese speakers. I don't know if it's the same between Spanish and Portuguese here, but I know in Spanish, actually, the literal translation actualmente means now, right? Which in English we say currently, not actually. So actually and really are very oftenly used interchangeably. They're not exactly the same, but they share the same idea. And again, context might matter for like which one you might use, but like if, for example, if I say someone, if we use really as a modifier, meaning more, like a lot, right? So if I say, oh, that's really cool, right? Then I'm saying it's not just cool, it's a lot of cool, right? Really cool. But if I say that's actually cool, that doesn't mean the same thing. Okay. That means like, maybe theoretically it's not cool, but in reality it is cool, right? And notice I said in reality, really and reality are related, which is why actually and really, depending on the context, can very frequently mean the same thing. But actually tends to be the core of the idea behind actually is something that yeah, there's a way to think about this between English and Spanish. You can so in Spanish, the perspective is oh, hello, Francisco. Hello to you too. Feel free to ask questions. I'm just trying to explain something, as always. So in Spanish, which may be the same in Portuguese, I don't know, but in Spanish, the way that the word actually is looked at, like the perspective of it, which there's two ways, two very logical ways to look at this word. And English uses one way where Spanish uses the other way. You can look at something that's actual, right? Like if it exists now because everything that exists now, right? If it's the past doesn't exist anymore. So like dinosaurs don't exist, but their fossils do, right? So now only dinosaur fossils exist, not actual dinosaurs. So in Spanish, actualmente, right, actually, is looked at as meaning currently, as in now, because something exists now, right? Where in English, we have a completely different way we look at the word actually, which means like it's still based on the same idea, like in reality, right? If it's real, it's now, but we don't have this idea of now when we use it. We just mean the idea of existence. So you can see, right, if it exists now. And so they're like so close, these two ideas, like they go together, but English emphasizes the fact that something exists that's actually, like I actually like it. Like I really will say, okay, we'll come back to that. If I give you an example, maybe that's not real, but then if I, if I draw a machine, that's not a real machine, right? But if I build a machine, now it's an actual machine. It's a real machine. So it's about the reality of the thing, where in Spanish and maybe Portuguese, it's not, the emphasis isn't on the existence or the reality. It's about something that is now happening or something that exists now. So the emphasis is on the now part. But because actually and really, again, really points to something that is real, right? It's an adverb meaning, like in a real way or in a real state. Um, really has uses, as I said, like meaning a lot of something. I really like it. That actually does not. So really has ways to be used that are not the same. But depending on the context and how, these two are being used, they do have a point where they meet and they can be used pretty much interchangeably. So it's a difficult pair because of that, but I hope that makes sense. It's just the way English looks at things. Um, yeah, so part of the personality of the language. Um, okay, Rodrigo. I have a question. Would you say, would it be okay if came later, or would it be okay if I come later? I've heard both ways, but I'm not sure if both are correct. Yeah, so, well, I don't know if this is probably a typo. Would it be okay if I came later? We need I in both cases. But the question I think is about came and come. This is a fantastic question. This is an absolutely fantastic question because probably the standard normal way that you're taught according to the basic rules, right, is okay, would it be okay if I came, right? Now we're speaking hypothetically, right? This is just like a polite way to say the question, but we're phrasing it in a hypothetical structure. You're really asking like, can I come, right? Like, will you allow me to do that? But this is a nice, polite way to do it. And so we use this sort of hypothetical framing. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry too much about it. That's more about the conditional tenses. But you're supposed to use came, which looks like the simple past. Don't be confused. It's not the simple past. It's a grammatical form called the subjunctive that in English, in modern English, looks the same as the simple past, but it's not actually past tense. So don't be confused by that. It just looks like it. So we say, would it be okay if I came later? That's what your textbook might tell you, right? What if you're introduced to the subject, you're supposed to use, okay, would and came. In reality, things get a little messier. And this is a very, very, very difficult thing to teach and a very difficult thing to really master. And it's something that you really have to pay attention to in English and get used to over time with lots and lots and lots of input. You can target it, but it's so complex because there's so many possible variations. And sometimes when you break the standard thing that you're taught as the correct grammar, um, sometimes it might be interchangeable, and sometimes it might create a slightly different meaning. So it's a mess, unfortunately. But for this particular case, would it be okay if I came later? Would it be okay if I come later? Um, Now, I can't think of any specific contextual details that might create a difference in meaning here. So I'm going to go ahead and say that these are exactly the same. They are exactly the same. Um, Again, context is super important. Maybe in a particular context, we might get a little difference. Probably not here. I would interpret if you just asked me this, right? Like, oh, there's a party, and you don't know if you can come to the party, and so you say, oh, would it be okay if I came later, right? Or maybe you can't come to the party on time, but you can come later. So you're asking, well, I can't be there at this time. Can I come, a little later? Um, so both are perfectly fine. They're completely interchangeable. They mean the same thing in this case. So very good question there. Francisco, actually would be more formal than really. No. There's no formality between actually and really. I would say. Again, context is always important, guys. So when when you ask a teacher or just a native speaker, like, hey, is the difference between this and this, this, like, is it more formal? Is one more formal than the other? Usually we can look at it and we'll say, no, not really. But then there might be a specific context, right? There's always a specific context that's like, well, in this case, you know. Um, but generally I'm going to say no, right? No, there's no formality relation between these two. Okay, Matthias, sorry. So if there, no need to apologize. Anytime you're not sure about something, like I'm here to help you, right? I'm going to say that I'm here to help you. Um, the more questions you ask, the more in the live stream I have to talk about, or the more material I can potentially make in videos and stuff. So asking questions is only helping me, right? You're not bothering me. And if you don't understand, right, and I have to explain it 3 times, that's just how it is. Clearly, I maybe I didn't explain it in a way that fit in your brain well enough the first time or the second time, and that's okay. I'm experienced enough to know that sometimes the way that I'm looking at it and the way that the way that my brain is sort of working and perceiving it, the way your brain is working and perceiving it, they may not be quite looking at it the same. And this is a common problem even between speakers of a native language. This is why we have disagreements and arguments. We have different experiences. And so it's on me to find a way to explain it that makes sense. So if something doesn't make sense, always feel free to say, oh, well, could you explain that again? Or I don't know what you mean by this. That's fine. So anyway, if there is a voiced TH as in the T, the T will turn into a dental D and not dental T, right? Just wanted to, I'm sorry. Okay, so we have a bit of a perceptual problem here that doesn't actually matter, but I'm going to point it out anyway. First, I'll answer your question. Dental D, okay. This is something that I made it explicit in the lesson about the TH sound. And that's for any TH questions, that's the first place you should go, because I have a lesson on the TH sound and I do talk a little bit about the dental versions. So that's why, I make certain videos first before I start talking about certain things, because then I can point back to the main resource. But T is voiceless. Oops, supposed to be 2 S's there. Voiceless. Okay, voiceless. Now, because it's just airflow, right? All right. Now D is voiced. Okay, and this is just regular T and D. T, D. Okay, same position, same creation of the sound. It's just you vibrate your vocal cords for D, and we hear the voice. Okay, now we have a voiceless TH, is, and we have a voiceless or a voiced TH, which is again same position. We just add the voice. Okay, so what do you think? It would make sense that if we use this dental T or D variation for the TH sounds, which again is very normal, it's not informal, it's perfectly fine, with the exception maybe at the end of words, unless there's a connection or linking there. It's going to make sense that they're going to match, right? Because if I start trying to make, say, a voiceless TH into a dental D, well, now it might sound like it's voiced, right? So now it's like, is it a voiceless TH or is it a voiced TH? Now there are some things that can change what exactly happens. Maybe there's some linking rule that can affect, like, okay, well, maybe it's voiced TH, or actually, we'll say voiceless TH, and we're using a dental T normally, but because of what comes before it, maybe it kind of, changes it a little bit. That's possible. Don't worry about that. Those are edge cases, special cases. In general, just the basic idea, voiceless is going to match voiceless. So if you're doing a voiceless TH, the alternative way to do that would be a dental T. So instead of saying think, you can say think. Again, not a normal T. Don't say tink. Okay, that's completely different. That is not the standard normal way to pronounce American English. I know there are some dialects that do that, and that's fine in those dialects, but not in regular American English. So make it flat. Okay, think, think, think. And because it's softer, it doesn't have that crispness of t, the normal T sound. That makes it a little harder to hear the difference between the dental T and the dental D, but there is a difference. So the voiceless will match the voiceless, the voiced will match the voiced. So when we say the, which is voiced, that can only be replaced, optionally be replaced, with a dental D, not a dental T. Okay, you're not going to say t. That's completely wrong. Okay. T or not dental T, right? Yes. So your understanding there is correct. Now the little perceptual problem I would say, so you're saying the T will turn into a dental D or dental T. It's not the T, right? In the spelling, we see the letter T and the letter H. But those are two symbols representing one sound. So it's not a T that's changing into dental T or D. T and D in English cannot be dental. At no time at any point are you going to change a T or a D into like a T or D into Th or D. Okay? It doesn't exist. For the TH, that's the variation. And so you're not changing the T in the word the, you're changing the sound, which we refer to as the TH, in letters because it's two letters representing one sound. That might seem like a small little point, but I think it's important to always emphasize we're talking about the sounds, not the letters. And I don't want you to get confused between the normal T and D and this variation of the TH sound. They're two completely separate things. Okay. I got so confused. I'll watch that again afterwards. Okay, sorry, Steve. Yeah, I definitely probably could have explained that better. The way I was originally thinking about it was a little bit different. Then I was like, I realized, oh wait, there's a problem with that. So, yeah, rewatch it. If you're still confused, you can leave a question later or bring it up next live stream, and I will try to explain that better. But Rodrigo just noticed the word I. Yeah, exactly. I mentioned that. Good. So yeah, that was a typo. Very nice. So typos happen, no problem. I make them too, because nobody's perfect. Is the do not the verb, always unstressed. What do you mean do not the verb? You mean like, wait, what? That talk about short, long, unstressed, stress made me a bit confused because of my mother language influence, not influency. Influency doesn't, that's not a word. You're confusing influence and fluency, which are two completely different words that share the same root. Hello, Meadow. Hello, Habib. Welcome to the chat. Feel free to ask questions. It seems we're quite productive today. Okay, so some clarification on the short and long stress unstressed thing, as well as, so you say, is the do not the verb always unstressed? So when you say not the verb, because do is only a verb, well, I guess technically not. I mean, there are ways that you can use it not as a verb. Are you referring to do as a helping verb? Like if we ask a question, do you like it? Or are you referring to some other use of do, like say a to-do list or something? Or like the do's and don'ts of, okay, so a helping verb. This is what I want you to think about. Okay, this is super important. And this is why I started the course talking about the general concepts, and why very early on I started telling you guys with the stress about content words and function words. Content words and function words. Super important. Okay. A verb is a content word, right? Because it gives us content. A function word like in, right? It's just a preposition. It just links, shows the relationship between two things. Usually is not stressed because it's a function word, right? Now, content words, right? If any word in English is more than one syllable, any word in English is more than one syllable, then you will have at least one stressed syllable somewhere in that word. Okay, that's the one big general rule of stressing. That's easy, but you just have to hear. If it's like a 5-syllable word, it might have a primary and a secondary stress, and you have to kind of hear where the stress is. That's where it gets a little difficult. But that if it's more than one syllable, it's going to be stressed, but you have to find which syllable is the stress. Okay, if any content word in English is one syllable, it will be stressed. Okay. So if a content word is more than one syllable, there's going to be a stress somewhere. But if a function word is more than one syllable, there will also be a stress somewhere in the word, like about. Okay. But for one syllable words, if it is a content word, it is stressed. If anybody wants clarification on that, or wants me to talk a little bit more about that, let me know. I'll come back to it. I'm going to go to the question here. So we're asking, is the helping verb do always unstressed? Okay, let's think about it. So if I use the verb to go, right? I go home. Okay. We know that's one syllable. It's a verb. It's a content word. It's going to be stressed. If I say I do my homework, okay, do in this case is the verb. It's the main verb. It's in English we don't say I homework, right? Homework isn't a verb. We say I do my homework. I do something, right? Or I do the laundry. So that is the verb. It's one syllable. It is a content word in this case. Okay, I do the laundry. I do my homework. Okay, so that's always going to be stressed. But when we say, do you like it? This is one of the maybe stupid things about English grammar, because English didn't used to work this way back in, well, maybe I think in Shakespeare's time it did, but sometime in Middle English, I think it worked differently, like in German, right? If you're a German speaker, or even I think Spanish and Portuguese, it's kind of the same idea, where instead of saying I like it, or say you like it, in German, they would say, like you it, right? And you need that subject still. So they just switch the position. And technically, that's still happening in English because we just don't say do in the positive statement unless we're emphasizing, right? So if I say I go home, this is actually I do go home, but we don't need that first do because the verb go is enough. We don't need the do to help it, right? This is why in the negative, I don't go home, we say I do not because the do is there. Or in the question, we say do I go home? We just switch the position. The do is still there. But in the positive statement, it disappears because we don't need it, right? We need it to make the question and we need it to, because that's just how English works now. We don't just switch the subject and the main verb. So the do is always there in all cases. And if we're emphasizing, like if I want to make it clear, like you don't understand, like, well, wait, so do you go home or don't you go home, right? I say, no, I do go home. So it will come out there when we're emphasizing or clarifying maybe. But even then it's still optional, right? And because part of the reason why it is optional is because it's a function word, right? It's a helping verb. Helping verbs are not regular verbs. They're not content. Okay. The reason why a helping verb is not a content word is because it's simply helping the main verb, right? Or it's affecting the main verb or the grammar in some way to allow the main verb to work. Okay. Is just part of English. So do is what we use for regular statements, right? We don't say it in the positive usually. Say it in the negative. I don't go. Right? Present tense. I don't go. Or I or do I go? Do you go? Of course, we could change it to past tense, right? I did go. See, now in the past tense, in order to make it past tense, you can say I did go or I went, and both are fine. There's two ways to say it because, again, the do is always there. It's just in the past tense, we kept did go as an alternative way to say the same thing. In the present tense, we almost always drop the do. Or I didn't go. Did I go? Right? So again, the do is always there. Now, if it's, say, present perfect, right, we know that we have as a main verb, in which case it's stressed. I have a car. But we also have as a helping verb to make the perfect tenses. I have done something. In that case, have is usually contracted. I've done something. Where in the main verb in American English, it's usually not contracted. There are special cases you can do it, but that's more of a British thing. And because it's a helping verb, right, because it's just a function word, it can contract. Do doesn't contract. It just doesn't happen to contract, but have can. If it's a helping verb, if it's present perfect, past perfect. And the idea is I've done it. I've gone there. Right? I've gone home. So go again is the main verb. It's just in a different form because of the English grammar. Same thing with modal verbs: can, must, should, would, could. These by default, normally they're not going to be stressed, okay, because they're function words. They're helping verbs. It just so happens in English that do, have, and be. The reason why these three words are in like the top, I think actually, yeah, those three words I think are the three single most common words in English, or the most common verbs, I should say, most common verbs, is because all three of these, do, be, and have, can be used as main verbs and they can be used as helping verbs. If they're main verbs, right, be is special. Be is the special stupid one. If do is a main verb, it's stressed. I do the homework. If have is a main verb, it's stressed. I have a car. If do is a helping verb, do you do it? Do you do it? It's not stressed. You can choose to stress it if you have a special reason. Like, I ask you and you don't answer. I ask you and you don't answer. I say, okay, do you do it? Or do you like it? Okay. that's a different part of English. That's intonation and ways that we might use the stress to emphasize something. But normally, that do helping verb is not stressed. Same thing with have, right? I have done it before. I have been there before, right? I'm emphasizing, but that's a special case. So normally it's not going to be stressed and it will be contracted if it's a helping verb. Be is the stupid one. I know this wasn't the question, but let's finish up the trinity, all three of them, right? Be is just an equal sign in English. Okay, normally, as a main verb, it's just an equal sign. So if I say he is tired, right, which of course we know we normally contract, right? That's one of the reasons why it's not stressed. You can choose to stress it. You can choose to uncontract if you have special reasons. Sometimes we just don't happen to contract, but usually the contraction is the normal way we speak. But if I say he is tired, even if I uncontract it, that doesn't make it stressed necessarily. Or if I say I am a teacher, right? It's teacher, I am a teacher. Everything else is really low. And that's because it's just an equal sign, right? I equal teacher. He equals tired, right? Now, if to be is the main focus of the sentence, like I ask, how are you? That should be capitalized H. How are you? Right? It's not. Well, there's different ways you can do it, right? Like, but a very normal default way to do it is, how are you? How are you? How are you? Right? Because I'm asking about your state. What does your state equal right now? That's the focus, the purpose of why I'm asking the sentence. And so in special cases like that, to be does get stressed. But if it's just a regular statement of this equals that, we don't stress it. We're just making a statement. I'm a teacher. He's tired. Whatever. Now that's to be as a main verb. Okay, so even if it's a main verb, it's usually not stressed, but there are cases where it might have to be stressed. If to be is a helping verb, that would be like in the continuous tenses, like I am running, okay, or I'm running. Again, this is almost always contracted. I'm running. This to be, we just need to go with the ing form to make that continuous or progressive tense. And so this to be is just a function word. It's just there for the grammar. If you say I running, we're going to completely understand what you say. It's just going to sound bad, right? It's not actually needed for the meaning necessarily. But anyway, yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Steve, and then some. But specifically, is it always unstressed? By default, yes. But again, if you have a special reason to stress do as a helping verb, like do you like it? Then it can become stressed. Any word in English can potentially become stressed if you have a special reason. But normally, no. So, and then you say that talk about short and long, stress and unstressed. Yeah. When I did the Hindi shadowing challenge, I realized how this can be a very confusing concept. And it also made me even more strongly believe in my position that using the term long vowel and short vowel should not be part of an English teacher's vocabulary. Like those terms should not be used for an English teacher. If you're learning Hindi, for example, I guess maybe in Portuguese too. I don't know that much about Portuguese, but when I was trying to shadow that Hindi sentence, in the course of that, I learned that say there's the sound ah that sometimes is short and sometimes is long. So there's like ah and ah, and there's actually a difference. They use those two to be like it's the same sound in terms of how it sounds, but the short one is used in some places and the long one is used in some places. And so there's actually a linguistically important difference between using the long and the short. That is a feature that does not exist in English. It does not exist in English. Okay. So when teachers tell you about long vowels and short vowels, if you come from a language where you have one sound that if you use it short or long, it makes a difference in the word. That is something completely different than what an English teacher is trying to tell you. And that's one reason why I think that English teachers specifically, other languages are fine, but English teachers specifically should not say short vowels and long vowels because it causes all kinds of confusion. And in addition, even if you come from a language that doesn't use longer vowels and shorter, like a long version and a short version of the same sound for different reasons, even if your language doesn't do that, one thing in my experience is that I've had students that come to me and they think that the short vowels can only be unstressed because they're short, and the long vowels can only be stressed because they're long. So we have the long E, right, which is often stressed, but not always. There are cases where E is not stressed, but it almost always is. And then I, right, that's called the short I. Like it or is. And the long I is I, which is a diphthong. And it's called long because you have one starting point and a different end point. We're blending two sounds. I is one sound unit, where is just a single sound that starts and ends in the same place. But I can be stressed. Like if I say sit, right? It's the same sound. It and sit are pronounced the same, minus the S, except sit is stressed, it is not. Okay, so don't confuse long and short with stressed and unstressed. Those are two completely different things. In fact, I want you in English, I don't care how your language works, in English, do not think of vowels as long and short. Think of sounds as single individual sounds like e, I, a, right? The basic vowel chart. I say sound 1, sound 2, sound 3, sound 4 in order of the vowel chart. Or we have individual vowel sounds, which are called monophthongs. Mono means one. And then we have two vowel sounds that are blended together, which are diphthongs. Di means two. Okay. That's how you should think about English sounds. Just completely forget this long short idea because it's going to cause all kinds of problems one way or the other. Okay. Does that make more sense, Steve? If not, I can tell me specifically, like, I don't know what I'm saying that's confusing. I could try to re-explain it. It's a very, very important point. So let me know about that. Hopefully that solves the problem, but if not, I can re-explain it or try to do it differently. But Rodrigo, another interesting thing I've noticed, sometimes you guys use bring and come for places you're not at. For example, I can't bring it onto the plane, even if the speaker is not on the plane. Oh, this is a deep problem. Or even, are you coming to the party when the speaker is not at the party yet? Oh boy. Oh boy. This is something that I'm not prepared for. But okay, I'm going to try to not make this very long and complicated. I've explained this to students over time, and I kind of gotten a little better about it. But it's a very complicated thing to begin with. Okay. Let's start here. We're going to build up some blocks here. Okay, so we have verb pairs like go and come, which are generally opposites, right? And then we have verb pairs like take and bring, generally opposites. Notice I say generally, they're generally opposites. So the idea of go or take it's the same idea in both verbs, right? There's the speaker, usually, right? The person say, okay, I'm going to go home. So I am away from home, and I'm saying that where I am now, I'm going to leave this location, and my end destination is home. Okay. Or take, right? Take is just going plus something. Like you have something with you that you are going with, right? So I will take the file, well, okay, maybe not the file. I'm thinking of programming because I'm studying programming. I will take the bottle home, right? Thank you for the bottle. It's a lovely gift. I will take it home with me. Okay. But it's the same idea. The speaker is leaving the current location going towards some other location. Come and bring are the exact opposite in the basic idea. The basic idea, right? So if I'm here and I want to go home, I'm not going to say I'm coming home, right? Now again, the basic idea. We're going to come to the complicated part. By default, right? It would be if, say, you are, say, you're part of my family. You live at the same house, okay? And then I'm on the phone, and you say, "Oh, are you coming home?" Right? Because I'm away from where you are, so I'm the listener, and you would use "come" because it's the opposite direction, right? So that's the basic idea, right? Hopefully that's clear so far. So go away from where I am toward the listener, right? To wherever someone else is. Well, I guess, see, as soon as I say toward the listener, that breaks down because maybe I'm talking to somebody who's right here. I'm going to go away from that. But it's basically the speaker is leaving their current location to go to somewhere else. Where come would be from like someone else's perspective, where the listener is going to come to where that speaker is, right? So hopefully that's clear so far. If not, let me know. I know it's a little complicated, but that much should be clear, I think, to most people if you have an intermediate level. These are very basic verbs, right? These are the basic things that you learn. In reality, English speakers have this thing that we do, and I'm sure other languages do it too. I don't know. But we have this thing that we do where we can put ourselves into a different situation, and that affects our speech, which I know sounds very abstract and crazy, but I like this example. So let's say um, I had a student who's from Brazil, and he would travel to the United States and to China a lot for work. And he had this problem, this exact problem, right? Because he would get to the TSA where they're checking him. They're saying, okay, why are you here? Blah blah blah. And he was never sure if he should say, "Oh, I'm going to Brazil," or "I'm coming to Brazil," or like what should he say? Um, so this is the way that I explained it to him, basically. So let's say that right now you are in Brazil, okay, and I am in the United States. We're talking on the phone, okay. Now, if I'm talking to you and I'm going to go to Brazil, right? I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to Brazil next month, okay, and that's fine. That's the basic use of go, no problem. Now, I could, right? One alternative I could imagine, and we're not like really sitting here thinking about this. It's a quick little thing that happens in the brain, a little perspective shift, where I could imagine myself being where you are, right? Especially if I've been there before, I might sort of be like, oh, I've already been there. So it's like I'm coming back in a way, right? So I might think, I might be sort of thinking from that perspective. And instead of saying I'm going to Brazil next month, I might tell you I'm coming to Brazil next month. Perfectly fine. Means the same thing in this case, right? Um, so here, go and come are interchangeable because of my little perspective shift. Right? Their basic meaning hasn't changed. It's just the way that I'm thinking about it. English speakers have the ability to do this. It's a weird thing. It's the same thing I was talking before. I was explaining to Meadow actually. I don't remember who was here, but I was talking about this or that and how it can kind of depend on how we're thinking about it. And sometimes potentially they might actually be interchangeable, but usually they're not. Um, another way that we could do this, let's say that you're in Brazil, I'm in Russia. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the United States, right? So I'm talking to you on the phone. I'm in Russia. You're in Brazil, and I say, "When are you going to the United States?" Now that makes sense because I'm not in the United States. You're not coming to where, my country to where I am generally. Um, so I say, okay, you're going from Brazil to the United States. Okay, that's fine. But especially if I'm a US citizen, I just happen to be in Russia at the moment, right? I might be in the perspective of like, well, it's my country, or I've been there before, or whatever. And so even if I'm in Russia and you're going to the United States, I could also ask, when are you coming to the United States? Even though I'm not actually there. Now, especially if like maybe I'm talking to you right now and I'm not in the United States, but I know that when you go to the United States, I will be in the United States, then I can definitely use come because I'm sort of projecting into the future that I'm going to be there when you're there. So some verbs like this doesn't affect all verbs, right? It's these really common, practical, everyday sort of verbs of motion, usually that or like take and bring by extension, they would be verbs of motion because you're taking or bringing it with you. Um, that we can. It depends on how we're thinking about it that will affect which one comes out. And depending on the context, it may not really matter which one comes out. Um, so I know that's a tricky problem. I know that's kind of abstract, but hopefully that makes sense. That this idea that it depends on how we're thinking about it. That's the key idea I want you to take away from that. Um, so let me know if that makes sense. Okay, so make sure I don't skip anything here. Okay, we'll see those videos. I guess it makes more sense. Yeah, so Matthias, if you're still here, TH classes. Yeah, I know. I know some people come and they haven't seen the previous material, but Matthias, if you're still here, I will watch those videos. I will watch, not see. Watch, see, and look are very close. If anybody wants me to explain the difference between watch, see, and look, let me know in the chat, and I will explain the difference. It's actually pretty easy if it's explained to you the right way. So, of course, in real life, things can get a little messy, but the way I explain it, it usually fixes a lot of those problems. Rodrigo, it does make sense. Okay, good, perfect. Lily, hello. Glad you're here. So yeah, as in you're agreeing with Rodrigo, or yeah, as in you want me to explain the difference between watch, see, and look. Okay, so Matthias, yes, watch. Sorry. Okay. Again, no need to apologize. Right, you're going to make mistakes. Period. You're going to make mistakes. It's not an option, right? If you're going to learn any skill, especially a language, no need to apologize ever, unless maybe you say something really embarrassing. I mean, okay, fine, you can apologize, but um, failure is the soil of success. So that mistake that you made, next time you're going to have a little bit of a higher chance to remember that it's watch, not see, right? But if you never say anything, you're not going to develop that feeling for the difference between them. Okay, Lily wants to know the difference. So first, I'm going to get to Meadow here, who has been waiting very patiently, I'm sure. Sorry, Meadow. Do you really think that stress and unstressed can replace long, short approach? Can you give us some examples like the one you just gave? I kept reminding myself is one word, of using quotation marks. Oh, that's good. Again, I assume you don't have them on your keyboard, but the exact quotation marks. But yeah, as long as you're doing something, then that's going to make it a lot clearer. So I appreciate that. Okay, so to be clear, I'm not saying that stressed and unstressed replaces long and short. That's not right at all. What I'm saying, any sound in English, whether it's a long sound, meaning a diphthong, or a short sound, meaning an individual sound, any sound in English potentially can be stressed and it can be unstressed. That's a completely separate concept. See? So even by me trying to explain part of the reason why you shouldn't use the terms long and short, or you should just ignore that, I have to talk about stress and unstressed because that's one of the misunderstandings that some students have And so then I mentioned stressed and unstressed, and then as I explain that, other students, like you in this case, it seems, think that I'm saying stress and unstressed is a replacement. That's not what I'm saying at all. Any sound could be an R-colored sound, an L-colored sound, could be an individual sound, e, a, right? Doesn't matter. Or any diphthong sound, which R color and L color are technically diphthongs, but I, a, ow, oi. Potentially, any single sound can be stressed, can be unstressed, and specifically, it's the syllable, not the sound itself. Um, and that's going to depend on the word, right? We talked about if it's a single syllable word that is a function word like it, normally it's going to be unstressed. Okay. If you have a very special reason to stress to stress a function word that is not stressed normally, then you can, but normally it's not. Okay. Usually we don't stress it. So that I sound is pronounced a little faster, a little shorter because of the stress, right? But the same exact sound can be pronounced a little louder and a little longer to make it stressed. Sit. Okay, but it's the same sound. So it doesn't matter if in this case, both of them are short. It's the short I, as it's usually called, but in one case it's stressed, one case it's not. So I'm not trying to replace long and short with stressed and unstressed. The thing that I replace long and short with is you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as single sounds and diphthongs. So e, whatever, and then I, a, ow, oi. And then technically the R color and L color are also diphthongs. So there's individual sounds and diphthong sounds, two sounds put together. So that would be the long and the short, right, in English. That's literally what it's referring to. Because the short I is I, the long I is I. The short, actually, no. See, this is one thing that makes it even dumber, and why I really disagree with it, because the long E is an individual sound. E, E. Now, if I say that fast, E, 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 it doesn't have to be pronounced in a long way. It's just kind of perceived in isolation as long compared to eh, that third vowel sound on the vowel chart. Like, so we have like C and, or let's do this, beat and bet. Okay. Both of these, E and E, are both individual vowel sounds. Okay. And so looking at one is long and one is short, not only does that sort of mix you up in terms of categorizing the sounds, but it just the perspective in English, it causes so many problems. I hope you're getting what I'm trying to explain here, because my brain is just like, it causes this and this and this, and I can't explain all of that at once. But basically everything I've said about it. If you haven't seen my lesson on why you should forget the terms long vowels and short vowels, I have a lesson on that. It's in the pronunciation course. You can find it. But it bugs me so much. I absolutely hate when an English teacher talks about long vowels and short vowels, because it is a horrible, horrible concept in English. Again, if your language makes a difference between the same sound in a long version and a short version, like say if I and sit actually made a difference in the usage, then it would make sense, right? But the only difference between it and sit is that it is not stressed and sit is, and there's an S in it. There's no like linguistic difference between like short I is one sound and then long I is a different sound, and you can't use them the same. That's not the case in English, because if I say it really slowly, it's going to be a little longer. It's still not going to be stressed. But if I say, do you like it? Do you like it? Right? There might be a reason why I say it that way, right? Or if I say really quickly, can you sit down? Can you sit down? Right? It's Can you sit down? right? Even though it's stressed, because I'm speaking so fast, it's still going to be, it's going to sound kind of short and small because of the speed, right? So the thing that makes the difference in English is the how clearly or unclearly you're enunciating, how slowly you're speaking, how fast you're speaking. But that has nothing to do with long and short. It's a horrible concept imposed on English that messes up so many things. So anyway, I know that's sort of a rant, but I really hate that concept in English. Like I really, really hate it with a passion, and I could just talk about it forever. Okay, so Lily wants to know the difference between watch, see, and listen. Listen. All right, so it's very, or not listen, see, because listen and hear is another similar pair. That's probably why I said listen on accident. Watch, look, and see. Okay, so think about this. See is, think of it as it's like a basic verb of perception, right? It's your eyes work, your eyes see things. It doesn't matter what you're focusing on. It's not about focusing on anything. It's just what is in my vision. What are my eyes perceiving? Okay, that's I see something. Right. Now, see can be used in a more abstract way, like it can mean I understand. That's a different use of see. We don't have to care about that. Okay, we're just talking about the regular use of see, which is most common. So if I look out the window and I say, okay, I see a house, I see a tree, I see a car, I'm not necessarily focusing on them. They're there in my vision. And I'm telling you what is in my vision. What do my eyes perceive? Okay, so that's see. Look, notice we usually say at. There's a reason why we usually say at, and it's part of the logic of at. And it's really closely tied with the logic of on, which is why we say focus on. That's kind of a complicated point. Don't worry about that now. You can read my book if you want to learn more. I'll be making the lesson for at later in the course here on YouTube. But part of the reason we use at with look is because, right, if you have a gun and you're shooting targets, or if you have bow and arrow and you're shooting targets, right, the target is in a particular point in space, right? So say it's like this bottle, right? You want to hit this bottle, and the bottle is sitting there, and you're over here. Okay, you're not, when you say I'm trying to I'm shooting at the bottle, it's because I'm trying to hit where this point in space is located, right? This object is located, so I'm trying to hit it as a target. Now, if we say look at, that's the reason why we use at with look, because look is if you take see, right? My eyes perceive something, and I'm focused on. Again, there's a close relationship between at and on here. Don't worry about that. That's okay. But I'm focused on the thing that I see, and so I am sort of giving my attention, right? Actually, notice attention at the start of it. Did I put 3 T's there? I did. There are 2 T's. It's like at tension, right? Where's my awareness? Where's my concentration? Okay. So I'm taking my basic perception of seeing and I'm focusing it on an object. So I could say, I see the bottle. It's there. Okay. But now I'm looking at the bottle. That's my target, the target of my vision, the target of what I can perceive with my eyes. I'm looking at the bottle. Okay. And then watch, very simply, is look at plus movement. So if the thing that you are looking at is moving, okay, now you can still use look at, but if you're specifically watching the movement, right, or the action that is happening, then you are watching. Watching is like, it's the perception of movement or the perception of action. Like you're focused on the action. This is why we say, right, if you say I see a TV, you're just saying there's a TV and I see it. It's in my vision. If you are looking at a TV, then that sounds like the just like with C, it sounds like the mechanical box, right? The thing that the images come through. You're looking at the physical TV. But if there's a program playing, or here on the live stream, right, you're receiving the video, I'm moving, right? Um, you are watching me explain things, right? Now you might be looking at me specifically, but you're watching the live stream. You're watching a TV show, okay? Because there's something happening. You're watching what's happening, okay? Now, in reality, as I said, things can get a little messy, may not always match that exact idea. Like, for example, if I just sit here and I don't do anything, I remain perfectly still. Okay, you're watching me be perfectly still. So this idea of movement or action, that's a core part of the idea. But if you happen to be watching a video, which the video is still going, it's still happening, but I'm not moving, you're still watching, right? You're just watching me not move. So again, real life is a little bit messy, but that's the basic idea. And that will work like 95% of the time. There's just certain little cases where things get not so nice. Does it mean that I'm focusing on the bottle when I'm looking at it? That's a good question. I want to say yes and no. I'm not going to make this complicated. I'm just going to say yes, because there is a difference between focus on and look at, and it's a little complicated. We don't have to worry too much about that, but basically yes, because again, notice I said attention, attention. There's a target, right? Something is at a location, and you're directing your vision. What you see is this thing, and you're focusing on it. So there's this idea of your awareness being directed at a target. And depending on what we're saying, instead of saying look at, we might say focus on, like usually a thought, right? You can't see a thought. So I'm trying to focus on the problem, right? Whatever it is, there's distractions and I'm trying to focus. Okay, how do I solve this problem, right? So there's some overlap. But the idea behind focus on and the idea behind look at, where you're directing your attention to a particular point, physical or not physical, that is shared. So in that way, yes, if you're focusing on the bottle, you're looking at it. If you're looking at the bottle, you're focusing on it. But it's not 100%. We'll just say that. It's not a 100% exact interchangeable relationship. So hopefully that makes sense. Now going back here, I want to get Steve's comment. What do you think is better? What do you think is, not it's? It's a common mistake. Because again, the it is going to refer to the thing that you're already saying, and so you're going to repeat yourself. So what do you think is better? Learning words using the meaning of them, or learning by a lot of contexts. What do you mean using the meaning of them? Like, I'm not sure how else you would use words. You mean like say you go to the dictionary and you try to like learn all the meanings of the words, versus just like, listening a lot, reading a lot. Maybe you use a dictionary, but it's just like many different contexts. So you sort of naturally learn the word in the different contexts instead of trying to learn the exact dictionary definitions. Okay, good question. In general, there's a very good general answer to this, which I would say is context. Context, 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 context. Now, over time, right, the biggest mistake that you can make is to say, okay, I'm going to take this really common word and I'm going to go to the dictionary and I'm going to try to memorize every single use that it has, right? Every single meaning or context that it's used in. That might give you some analytical knowledge that if I test you and I say, can this word be used this way? Yeah. Can this word be used this way? No. But that's not going to give you a lot of actual practical use, because this is one of the problems between knowledge and skill. Remember, knowledge is not skill. Knowledge does not immediately become skill. Skill is skill. You have to practice skill. So, knowledge, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a neurologist. I don't know exactly how the brain works, but knowledge is kind of stored in one way, and then the skill is a different thing. Like, you have to make that knowledge automatic to be able to just come out, right? And so there's a bit of a balance, right? Like, maybe you go to the dictionary because you find a word that you don't know. Oh, okay, that word means this, at least in this context. Okay, so now you know that at least one meaning of this word is this. And then let's say 3 months later, you find the same word, but you're like, that doesn't seem to make sense. Let me go to the dictionary. Oh, there's another meaning of this word. And in this context, it means this. Okay, now you're much more likely, and it's going to be much easier, you're much more likely to remember the different meanings of the word because you learn them in different contexts separate from each other. Because remember, words, I can take all the meanings of the words, put them into a list in a dictionary, and compile them like that. And that's fine as a resource, like a reference. But the actual use of a word is tied to other words and tied to contexts, right? And so no word in a language exists by itself. No word exists by itself. This is one of the biggest problems with vocabulary lists, especially if it's a list of similar things. That's the worst way to learn vocabulary. Apple, banana, orange, lemon. No. That there's actually been scientific studies on that. You will actually lower your ability to recall those words because your category, they're all fruits, right? And so you're like, okay, wait, was the word for apple orange? Like, this thing that's an apple, was it the word for that apple, or was it orange? I don't remember, right? Because you learn them at the same time. They're both fruits. Where if you learn apple, red, round, okay, crunchy, right? You bite the apple, crunchy, maybe bite itself, right? Bite, crunchy, juicy, right? There's the juice of the apple. If you learn words like that, then not only are you going to remember the word apple a lot better, but you're going to remember the words related to apple a lot better, because that's how words actually work in the brain. That's how we pull them out in real life. We don't have a dictionary somewhere in our brain and we think, oh yeah, okay, the apple is crunchy. The apple is crunchy. No, those exist as chunks in the brain, right? And that's how you want to learn words. So, but again, the dictionary is your friend. You can go to the dictionary if you're not sure. You can go to the dictionary to maybe if you want to say, I know this word really well, but I want to learn other ways that it's used. Because maybe you haven't seen other ways that it's used. You can go and maybe just look at it. Oh, that's cool. Don't try to memorize it. Maybe pick one of them to learn intentionally, right? But don't choose all of them at the same time. Because you're basically just wasting your time, unless your goal is to pass a test. And by that I mean like a vocabulary test, not a speaking test. Because if your goal is to pass a vocabulary test, use the dictionary all day long. Anyway, okay, good. So moving on. Okay, Liz, got it. Very nice. Rodrigo, in that Hindi sentence shadowing challenge, do you remember paying much attention to tongue position, or wasn't? Do I remember? I mean, the position of your tongue as you produce the sounds. Not only do I remember paying much attention to it, but that was one of the biggest single most important things that I did in the throughout the entire exercise, in every single step of the exercise, from the first time I tried to say the sentence all the way to the last time I tried to say the sentence. I was constantly, well, I can't say constantly, because if I shift my attention to the stress and the rhythm, my brain can only focus on so much. And so, and you'll notice this, especially if you take a class, you're getting direct feedback from somebody. You might notice that like the teacher says, "Oh, that sound was a little off," and you say, "Okay, blah blah blah." Okay, you do the sound good. Now let's put it back into the sentence and let's do the whole thing. Oh well, okay, your rhythm's a bit off. Your sound was good, but your rhythm's off. So you say, "Okay, let me try the rhythm again." So you try the rhythm again, and that sound that was off, that you corrected, now is off again, right? Because your brain can only focus on so much at a time, which is why we need to break things apart, slow them down, reinforce the muscle memory, and slowly put them back together. Okay, it's very step-by-step scientific. So I can't say I was constantly 100% of the time focused on my tongue, but when I was specifically trying to produce a specific sound, I was absolutely 100% aware of my tongue, how my tongue is feeling, trying to make little changes in my tongue, because if I don't make those little changes, I'm not going to sound better. Okay. Super, super important. Super, super important. But again, I know that I think it was last week you were talking about how that kind of like it doesn't make much sense to you and this and that and whatever. So um, really all you're doing is this is why the vowel chart is useful, right? So you look on the vowel chart, maybe you look at a vowel chart of where your sound is supposed to be around there, and then you look at the vowel chart of the sound you're trying to learn for English, right? You say, okay, well, the closest sound I know in my language is around here. And so I know either I have to be a little lower, I have to, use front or back of my tongue, whatever. That gives you an idea of what to do with your tongue. But after that, really, all this stuff with tongue position, all you're really doing is you're saying, I know the sound is somewhere around this position of my mouth. And you're trying to feel your tongue to make little changes so that you can produce that sound. That's all you're doing, right? All these explanations of, okay, your tongue is here and your tongue is there, right? I explain it a certain way that many other teachers probably don't. And that seems to be useful to people. And the way that other teachers explain it is also useful to many people. That's fine. But it seems like none of that is kind of clicking with you. So try to just think of it as I'm trying to feel my tongue and I'm trying to put my tongue into a place in a certain way that will produce the sound. Okay. And if you can't hear yourself making the sound, recording can help, recording yourself. If you can't hear yourself, then you need feedback. But let's say, you get feedback from somebody or you're working with a friend or whatever, and they speak English really well and whatever, their pronunciation is really good. They're a native, maybe. And they say, right, say you try to say ah. They say, not quite. That sounds weird. Maybe you're saying ah, 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 instead of ah, 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 right? So you say, okay, well, what can I do? And you just try to make a change, right? Again, knowing where the sound is supposed to be can help, right? But you just make a little change with your tongue and you try again. And if they say closer, farther away, no change, okay, you make a different change, right? And if it's closer, you want to keep making a change in that direction. If it's farther away, then you want to make a change in the opposite direction or make a completely different type of change. And it might take you 1,000 tries. Who knows? That's why a good teacher and a vowel chart can be super useful to cut down the time and the number of tries that it takes you. But at the end of the day, that's all you're doing, right? You're trying to use your tongue to produce the sound. And if it doesn't sound the way it should, right? It doesn't sound like English or whatever, you make a little change and try again. That's the whole process. That's literally the whole process. So maybe that makes more sense to you. I don't know. But Lily, okay, you did a review on Elsa Speak. I've been using its dictionary to cheek. Yeah. Well, CHEAK actually isn't a word, but we would pronounce that as cheek, like cheek, which is CHEEK. But yeah, might be a typo. CHECK. Check. I'm sure that is a typo. But check my very common problem, pronunciation. This also might be a typo, but many English learners say pronunciation. The verb is to pronounce. It's spelled OU, pronounce. But the verb, or the noun, not the verb, is pronunciation. spelled with just a U. Pronunciation. Very common mistake. No problem. Where was that? Okay, yeah. To check my pronunciation, only words, not sentences. What do you think? Is it useful? We need the do there. Do is part of the question. Okay. What do you think? If you say what you think, that is either very informal, very, very informal, and can possibly sound a little uneducated in a way, or that's part of a statement. Like, is that what you think? Period. Not a question. Because we don't use the do in that case. It's just a statement. Anyway, grammar. To answer your question, I don't have any experience with Elsa's dictionary specifically. If you're looking at the pronunciation of individual words, I mean, it's probably a really great source. Like if it doesn't sound like a robot, because that's one of the problems with the actual dictionary. Usually, it's like a robot voice, or it's just like a really unclear, like artificial voice, like on, for, whatever. So it depends, I guess. Probably it's not bad. It might be a good use of a audio source for words. But the one thing that I would say that you have to keep in mind is, there's nothing wrong with this. Elsa Speak is based on the fake neutral pronunciation, right? I did a whole lesson on this about why the Midwest doesn't have the neutral pronunciation. You can watch that lesson if you want. It turns out that actually in American English, we have more than one neutral pronunciation. And the way that I speak as a Western American, speaking Western American English, I still sound neutral, okay? And also the Midwest that's a myth that the Midwest has the neutral sound. It's actually the North Midland, not like the whole Midwest. There's actually a lot of accents and variation through the Midwest. But most people there will still sound neutral. They'll still sound generally neutral. And the thing that most pronunciation teachers or accent coaches teach you guys, whether you as non-native speakers or natives who want to sound more American in a neutral way, not from the South, for example, they will take these classes and they teach you this accent that doesn't actually exist. I mean, it's based on real speech, but it's actually not really spoken anywhere, and it still sounds neutral. It's perfectly fine. The way I speak matches most of that. There's a couple little differences, but the differences are generally so small that I still sound neutral, right? And the way that I'm teaching you is not going to match the way that Elsa tells you to pronounce the word. For example, the cot merger. I'm pretty sure that Elsa does not use that. I would be surprised if it did. The cot merger is something that's actually been moving eastward, and many young people under 40 are naturally using this in their pronunciation. It's sort of it's spreading across the United States. So it's not just a Western American thing. And the cot writes or I can never do it consciously. And just becomes ah. Okay, no lips. Just shift the sound back. That's it. So cot and cot are pronounced the same in the way that I say them. But Elsa is probably going to tell you that one word is cot, cot, something like that, and that the other word, caught, is caught, or something similar to that. I don't do it perfectly if I'm trying to consciously do it, because it's not part of the perception that I had, or that I have as a native. I've developed the ability to hear the difference between them, but it's not a natural part of my pronunciation. And so, and then I give you other hacks, other things that you can do, like with like the ing. Right? Again, certain cases, to keep it simple, I'll say the ing that's added to verbs. I did a whole lesson on the ing pronunciation hack. You can watch that lesson as well. That'll explain all of it. But the way that say like in the Midwest or like in other parts of the country that sound neutral, the way that many speakers say it is with like it, plus in the back, ing, like walking or seeing. Okay. Where the way that I say it and the way that it seems many Westerners say it, we don't say ing, we say een. So we change it to e, and we change to n in the front, and we say walking, seeing. Okay, it's another variation. It still sounds neutral. There's no problem with it. I think it's easier personally. I'm biased, of course, because that's how I speak. But usually for English learners, is already a difficult sound, and then may not exist in your language. So if you could just say walking instead, make it easier, right? Um, that's the only thing I would be aware of. If you keep the things that I tell you in mind, and then if Elsa tells you to do it a particular way, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just the cot merger, I'm not going to care. I'm just going to say because I want to use the cot merger. Then yeah, perfectly fine. Or if you're trying to develop more of a sound from the middle of the country instead of the western part of the country, there are little tiny differences, and you like those sounds better, those little changes better of how they speak, then just follow Elsa. Just for the way that Elsa would recommend the pronunciation. So, Meadow, this is totally true. One of the things that made me give up on all pronunciation courses because introducing what seems to me as two sounds as long as short. Okay, I see. I see. Yeah, so you have two grammatical structures between these clauses that are like you have to pick one or the other. The because doesn't quite work here unless you change the first part of the sentence. That's what was throwing me off. So one of the things that made me give up on all pronunciation courses was introducing, no because. Or you can say, I was really confused with other pronunciation courses because blah, 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 blah. So anyway, a little grammar problem there, but I understand. Introducing what seems to me as two sounds as long and short sounds was distracting and disappointing. At the same time, the thing that resulted in deciding to just rely on my ears instead of all that confusion. So does your channel cover all the vowels with your approach? Yes. um, I have spent most of this channel's existence building the pronunciation course. It currently has over 100 videos in it, which I know is a bit long, but I have certain sub playlists. Like there's a playlist for just the vowel sounds, there's a playlist for just the consonant sounds, so you can find specifically what you're looking for. But if you want to go through the whole course step by step as I designed it, then you can do the whole course. And I'm not done. I'm not done. I am getting closer to the end of like the major lessons. I still have a lot of like extra practice and minimal pair lessons to build that will or to film that will eventually make their way into that material as well. So I am still making some resources for the vowels, especially the R colored and the L colored vowels. But as for the main minimal pairs, the main extra practice, and the actual lessons for all the vowel sounds, diphthongs, monophthongs, R color, L color, those are all completely done except for the extra R and L. I actually just recorded one for the R recently. So it's still in progress, but the vowels are almost completely done. And of course, I can still talk about them. I might make some extra supplemental content at some point in the future. But my pronunciation course is going to have literally everything that you could really possibly want, minus a lot of technical nonsense. If which I mean, there's nothing really wrong with that. If you're super linguistically nerdy and you like technical concepts like or terms like articulation and soft palate and I don't know Some things are useful to talk about, things like vocal tract, that can be a useful term, even though it's a little technical. Or things like, like with the IPA, I really de-emphasize the IPA because it has problems in English. So if you're more of like the really technically, linguistically, scientifically minded and you like those terms, I don't really use those terms. But again, that's why I think a lot of people like my lessons, because I explain it in a way that's a lot easier to understand. So other than that, yes, my course will have pretty much everything, including everything about the vowels. So go check it out. Steve, you skipped my other question. I did. What was the other question? Oh, I did. Yeah, I see what happened there. Okay, sorry about that. So both correct. He's got a point. He got a point. No. He got a point sounds uneducated. Yeah, it just sounds like broken grammar. You can use it very informally, and that's fine, but in regular speech, it's not going to sound good. Let's see. Oh yeah, and your question was both correct. Yes or no. I wanted to check if it was like the meaning was the same. The meaning would be the same, but it's just the second one is not correct, and it sounds bad. Okay. Okay, so you said the apple, and you pronounced the as the. Isn't it supposed to? I swear I need to make lessons. I'm gonna make a lesson just for this, just for this one point. I have literally answered this question like 6 times in the live streams already, and that's okay because more people come. They haven't seen it. It's okay. This is a common question that I get. No, absolutely not. So what's happening here? Okay, there's a reason why you were taught that. There's a reason why you were taught that. This is an old rule. It's an old rule of English speech that if you have the plus a consonant sound, you can say the. You can reduce the to the, because the full pronunciation of the word is the. You can use that pronunciation anytime you want. I can say the cat, but usually it's going to sound a little weird unless I have a special reason to stress the word. Like, I'm the best teacher in the world, right? I might choose to say the in that case, even though I don't have to. That's just part of how English works, where we might sort of stress and unreduce something. The old rule that many teachers still teach you that it's not required in modern speech, is that if you have the plus a vowel sound, you're supposed to say the. You can't reduce it to the, because if you say like the plus a vowel, it makes it harder to understand or something. So if I say like the apple, okay. It's a stupid rule that most people don't follow anymore. There's a technicality there that I'm going to come back to, but first, even if the next sound is a schwa sound, right? Or the not true schwa, the upside down V, as I call it, the not true schwa. So if I say like the other, okay, you will hear people say the other, right? So with the, and then we get a small little Y sound between them, the other. Or you can say the other, The trick with the reduction plus the sound after it is you just make the second one louder, or sort of like do some sort of change that we can hear a little bit of a difference between them. But you just go right back into the sound. The other day. Oh yeah, I saw him the other day. No problem. Now, the technicality with that, and that's not informal. That's a normal part of how many people speak. The technicality about that is because this is a really old rule that has been well, I don't want to say core part. It's not like a big point, but it used to be a very standard part of how people speak the language. In modern speech, if the word the is followed by a consonant sound, you'll almost never hear the because we just reduce it. It's almost always reduced. But we really like the reductions. And so if it's followed by a vowel, that old rule will sometimes just happen, not because of the rule, but for convenience. For convenience, okay? It's the same with, say, like to and understand. Okay, for example, it could be to without a verb, like to a location, like to a location. That works too. It doesn't matter what type of word is after it, but normally we reduce to ta. Okay, like 99.9% of the time, it becomes ta, and maybe the d will change into a flap. That could happen too. But there's nothing stopping you from saying to. It's just we normally don't. Okay. However, the full pronunciation is to. Now, if we go to understand, and it doesn't matter if it's after, it could be any vowel, but if I say to understand, that's fine. Just like the other, to understand. No problem there. But it's very convenient to use the full pronunciation to. Don't stress it, just say to. And then we're close to that W, and we can use a small W to link with the next vowel, to under, to under, to under. So they both work. They're both perfectly fine. And it's really whichever one comes out is what comes out. It doesn't matter at all. Not one little bit. It's the same thing with the. Okay? Exactly the same thing with the. So you will sometimes hear a native speaker say the apple, and you will sometimes hear a native speaker say the apple. Both are fine. There's no difference whatsoever. Good. Okay, make sure I don't miss anything. I see I'm I'm a little behind in the chat. The last couple of weeks I didn't get lost in the chat, but now you guys are on it. Let's see. Okay. Matt, welcome to the chat. I know it took me a second and you're asking other questions. So here we are. Have you checked the Wikipedia page about California vowel shift? Yes. They claim that some weird changes happen in California, such as in friend approaches the vowel in bed. Yeah, so that doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. Many Californians, if you ask them, they'll say they don't have an accent. If you ask me, I say I don't have an accent. I know better because if you're from anywhere, you have an accent. Even in the small little island of Britain, they have like so many dialects and so many different accents and stuff, which you guys are probably not even really particularly aware of. So like even, being from, North California or Southern California, there are little differences in the pronunciation. They're not different enough for us to usually notice them unless we're really, really intentionally paying attention. They'll both sound neutral. Okay. So yeah, California English sounds very slightly different than, say, Arizona English. And that sounds very slightly different than, say, I don't know, Colorado English, right? But they all sound so similar enough that there's certain little things in a particular speaker's speech that might be variations, but in general, the average speaker is going to sound pretty much the same as another average speaker. One thing about Western American English, and probably maybe it's particularly in California English, I'm not sure, but in Western American English, one feature of it that I haven't told you guys yet, here's a big juicy secret, right? And maybe some of you have noticed this if you're very perceptive of how I speak. There's a Western American shift of sorts where e, and get a little bit lower, right? And then I don't think this is a Western thing, but we have what I call the lazy where instead of saying apple, we'll say apple, apple, apple. So we don't have to open as much. The shape is still basically there, and it makes it sound different than It's not apple, 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 apple. Okay. So there's still a difference there, but and in Western American actually can be pronounced a little bit lower. So E becomes like E, eh, eh, right? And that's a point that I think most of you don't really have to care about. If you're interested, it's nice to know. But I think that can make it harder for you to hear the difference between things. And, if you really want to sound like a Western American specifically, then you can learn that. But even in Western American English, we'll use both. It's like the cot merger. I wasn't aware of this until like a year ago when David pointed it out. But now I hear it in my videos when I'm editing. So I don't say ah and ah, right? However, I will sometimes, right, where people from other parts of the country who don't have the cot merger say, instead of saying on, they'll say on, right? And I've noticed in my videos sometimes when I say on. And so people with the merger, we don't hear the two, the ah and the ah, but we will sometimes slip into those for words that use either one. But generally, we tend to use the merged version. And so actually what's happening, at least in Western American English, is some of these little shifts and changes are things that are features of many speakers in Western American English, but they're not the way that we speak. They're just sort of like little variations that have developed or are developing, and you really don't have to worry about that. And even these little changes that have happened or are happening, again, they still sound neutral because they're so close to the sound of how other people speak. So you can see how there's a lot of technical details and a lot of things that, yeah, linguistically, according to scientists, yes, Californians have an accent. Yes, there's a little change here in this area in, Colorado or, in the West, whatever. But a lot of that can just get swept under the rug because it doesn't matter. It's not going to help you as an English learner trying to sound more natural, trying to sound more neutral, if that's your goal, or just to learn English pronunciation. Because these little details are so far in the weeds, as we would say, for the sounds, as far as the sounds are concerned, it doesn't matter. And maybe somebody disagrees with me and they hit dislike and unsub, and that's fine. But that's my position on it. So you also added or cast. Oh yeah, okay, cast sounding like cost. That one is very, very strange to me. I've never heard anybody say cast like cost. That's very, very strange. Maybe some Californians somewhere. I know up in San Francisco, they're unmerging A and L. Sometimes when you see AL, it's al, right? A plus o. But when AL is supposed to be ah, the L is silent. Okay, traditionally that's not true. Like you say ah, like palm, right? It would be an L-colored fifth vowel ah, all, like all, right? ALL. And usually in the spelling, the reason why we have ALL is because that second L creates the L color for the silent ah, right? So AL is just another way to spell that fifth vowel sound ah, most of the time, not all the time. Like if we say malware, oops, can't do it. Malware, that's al, not all. Okay, so there are cases where AL doesn't follow this, but when A and L represent ah, most Americans, like almost all Americans, say ah. We don't say the L. Okay, there's no L color, anything. But in San Francisco, in that Silicon Valley area, we're starting to hear speakers actually bring that L back. And so they're starting to say palm and almond and okay, well, also instead of saying, they do it also a bit with salmon. Salmon is an exception where it is spelled AL, but it's a with no L, right? That's a special exception. But they're starting to say salmon, which if most Americans will tell you that sounds weird and uncomfortable, and why would you say it that way? It's annoying. So there are specific regions also that have little changes as well. And you can adopt those if you want. But again, these are little details that aren't particularly going to help you unless you like those specific sounds, or maybe it's a little easier for you. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Do you think that cot merger is something regional? Well, so as I was explaining, the cot merger exists in Western American English, which includes Alaska, possibly Hawaii. I'm really not I don't know much about Hawaiian English. They're way off in the ocean. The cot merger also does exist it's a very slightly different placement, but it is still the merger of ah and aw in, I think it's Pennsylvania, because Rachel's English, apparently she naturally speaks with the cot merger, and she's from there, but she doesn't teach it. And that's one of the things that baffles me is like, it's so much easier for students to learn the cot merger. Why wouldn't you teach it to them? And I don't know. I think there's another area in my research. I heard that there's another area that also uses the merger, but it's generally a Western American thing. That's sort of the region. But as I said, it's something that for the past like 30, 40, 50 years has been moving from the West across the country. So now very, very many people under the age of 40 through the country. I don't. The South is a different special area, but like through the Midwest, the Upper Midwest, the up into the East Coast, and all that stuff. It's something that has been moving across the country, especially into the middle of the country. And so now, a lot of speakers under the age of 40, all across the country, are naturally using the cot merger. So it's something that is becoming less regional and more standard. Which is another reason why I teach it to you guys, or why I think that it's useful to teach it to you guys. So you said, is that what? No, that's not what I said. So is that what you think? Right, because the mistake that I think it was Lily. Was it Lily? I don't remember. Somebody said it. Yeah, she said what you think. Okay, let's take a quick look at this then. And this is such a common mistake because I think it's probably taught in a horrible way. I don't get it. It takes some practice to get used to it, of course, but it's very, very simple. When we ask a yes or no question, do you like it? So this is a yes or no question, a simple question. We need the do to make the question. We know that. That's very, very basic. It's English, day one, pretty much you learn that. Okay. Now, when we make a question in English, we need the helping verb. And sometimes that's do, sometimes that's have. If it's a modal verb, then instead of saying you can, we say can you. We just switch the position. That's it's still going to be there, but we need something there to help the main verb when we make a question, right? That's why do seems to appear out of nowhere in the question. When we ask a WH question, the same thing is true. What do you like? Okay, so we still need do. So that's what I was telling Lily, that she forgot the word do. And anytime you ask a question, you need that helping verb to make the question. Okay, in this case, it's just I just want to know what you like. Notice I just said, I want to know what you like. I'm going to come back to that. But if it's a specific question, if I'm asking you a question, we still need the do. We just add the what, right? Or where do you live? We add the where. Who do you see? We add the who. That's all we're doing, okay? In a statement, okay, you can't use the helping verb in a statement. If I say, you like dogs, there's no do, right? Now, of course, as I said, the do is technically there, and if we're emphasizing, you can choose to say you do like dogs instead of you like dogs, right? There's two ways to do the same thing, but usually the do is hidden. We don't say it, no problem, okay. So there's no do. Easy, unless do is the main verb. Now, when we make a WH statement, because remember the WH words, who, what, where, when, why, and how, which is just an H, but it's part of the same group. The interrogative words, right, technically, they're often thought of as questions. And I think that's usually how they're introduced, right? How do you make a what question? How do you make a who question? Okay. But they can also be used in statements. Now, if they're used in a statement structure, you can't use the do Unless, again, you're using it as an emphasis of a regular statement. But again, normally we don't add that do to a normal statement. So if I say, is that what you like? Okay, so I point to something, I say, is that what you like? Or is that the thing that you like? Okay, notice if I say it differently, is that the thing that you like? Okay, there's no do there because now I'm asking a question in that case, but the question is that, right? And the second part isn't the question part. We're adding the statement using clauses, right? Is that the thing that you like? It's a second clause, which is a statement. Or if I say, is that what you like? Okay, the question is that? And then I'm describing that question, that I'm pointing to, in this case with what you like. So I know that can be kind of confusing, but what can be used as a question and what can be used in a statement as sort of like a subclause to the main question to describe the question, right? And if you use the WH word in a way that it is in statement form, not question form, there's no do. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I've always been trying to find a way to explain that a little more simply and a little more clearly. So one day I will get there, but hopefully that should make sense. If it doesn't, I can re-explain it, give you some more examples. But saying, is that what do you think? That is absolutely incorrect, not good English, okay? Because now what you think is a statement, okay? It's the statement part of the question, because it's a compound statement. Anyway, I was wondering these if the correct of ing was to say it with the vowel from it or with the vowel from eat. Interesting. Okay. So that was a little confusing at the beginning there, but so the correct way to now be careful, right? Again, I have a special lesson where I talk about the ing hack, okay, and I talk about all these details. Watch that video. I will briefly go over this here. If ing is a core part of the word, like sing, thing, mingle, even, right? Whatever. Or even if it doesn't end with just but it ends with unk, like think, right? Think, etc. We're just adding that k to the end. It's the same idea. The core part of the word, right? You have to do in the back. Okay, there is no front end there. And if there's a k at the end, you add the k. Okay, so it's sing, not sing. Okay, because if you move it to the end, it might be a different word, or it just might not exist. As for the vowel is the thing that can change in all cases of ing, right? So the e, the way, or the vowel sound in ing, I always say e, not I. Okay, so like eat. If we add ing to a verb, for example, like walking, seeing, wondering, whatever, now you can change the vowel sound. You can do e or I, it doesn't matter. I do e. And you can also change to n. Okay. I know that sounds a little complicated, which is why in that lesson about the ing hack, what I recommend that you do is you say e, which I think is a little bit easier for a lot of English learners instead of I, but you always keep the so you don't have to worry about, is this a core part? Is this part of a verb? And you'll still sound natural. So if you say like sing, right, you're doing e plus that's perfect, no problem. If you say walking, it's going to sound almost exactly the same as walking, right, with the I. So you can always just keep it back here. but just change the vowel to E if that's easier for you. Yeah, so just a little note there. Okay, do these sound natural? What you think? What you got there? What you want to do now? Yeah, they sounded very natural. So the whatcha is a sort of a contracted version, like a spoken contracted version of what do you or possibly what are you? Um, so like if I say what you doing, that's what are you doing? Or if I say what you think, right, that's what do you think? Now this does sound informal. Okay, it does sound informal. It doesn't necessarily sound uneducated. It's just an informal way to speak. Okay, it's a very common thing, especially with what you're doing, right? Like if you want to say it in sort of like a playful way, like what you doing, right? Like maybe you want something from that person, and so you're trying to be nice. Like, hey, what you doing? Oh, that's cool. Uh huh. Uh huh. So, can I borrow some money? Right? Just makes it sound a little more playful or whatever. It's sort of softens the language a bit. So that's a whole different topic. But yeah, whatcha is a very common informal variation of what are you or what do you. Um, very good, very good. Can you leave out do? And yeah, so well, sorry, I didn't read the rest of it. Yeah, exactly. So you can, but it is informal. Otherwise, you would say like, "What do you think?" Right? Sort of connecting the what and the duh. You can flap the duh there. What do you? What do you? Or what do you? Right? That would be the full, uncontracted way to say it that does not sound informal and is, just the normal way. So, uh, Lily, yeah, what I like about the course. So you notice right here what I like about the course. Okay, there's no do there. That's a statement. What I like about the course is blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's a perfect example. Um, but if it were a question, right, what do I like about the course? I don't know. Okay. Um, so what I like about the course is that it makes everything more easy. It's supposed to be easier. We will sometimes say more easy. It's wrong, but yeah, good. And what do you think about vocal fry? Yeah, so I know that was mentioned earlier in one of the comments. Yeah, I woke up to quite a few comments this morning, guys. Like I was like surprised. I was like, whoa, people are engaging. Good. But well, I'm really glad that it's helping to make everything easier because that's my goal. That is literally my goal with making the entire pronunciation course. I want to lay everything out for you guys in the way that I think is best and the easiest, um, and give you these little hacks and other things that will still allow you to sound natural and neutral, um, if that is indeed your goal. Now, what do I think about vocal fry? Like I kind of just used, right? If that is indeed your goal, I kind of I dropped off a little. What do I think about it? So actually, so this is a concept that I was actually completely unaware of until relatively recently, um, and in my research on placement for the lesson that I am starting to piece together about that, um, of course, vocal fry comes up, and what do I think about it? I don't particularly think much of it. I do know that the doctors or scientists, whoever, officials say that, the vocal fry is not good for your vocal cords. Um, whether or not that's true, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but um, and I also know that if you try to speak exclusively, like if you're always talking like this and you're just like, yeah, hey, let's go to the store, like, uh-huh. I don't want to say nobody because I can actually, and actually that's kind of how we usually imitate Matthew McConaughey, like, hey, let's go check it out, yeah, or something like I don't know, or maybe like a surfer. You might imagine a surfer like, hey, brah, let's go, let's hit the waves. Like you might kind of try to speak like that, but like I don't think anybody like definitely the average person doesn't speak like exclusively with a vocal fry. I don't think you have to care about it at all. It's something that does happen in American speech, usually toward the end of sentences, because we're dropping off, right? We know that in English we drop at the end of a regular statement. If it's a question, we're actually going to raise, like, "Do you like it? Do you like it?" Right? So we don't really have that opportunity to drop into that vocal fry. But if I say, "Yeah, I like it," I like well, it's so small. I think that's a longer word. I really don't like swimming. Swimming, swimming. I don't know. It's hard for me to think of examples because this is relative in the concept, but you get the idea. Like as we're dropping off at the end, that vocal fry could come out depending on how we're speaking. Um, it's not something that you have to imitate to sound natural. It's not a requirement. In fact, I would recommend that you don't do it because if it is bad for your vocal cords, you're not doing your vocal cords any favors. We would say you're just kind of hurting your vocal cords. Um, so I would completely ignore the concept of vocal fry unless it's interesting to you and you want to incorporate it. Fine, you can, no big deal. But definitely don't speak that way normally, like as your standard way to speak. So that's pretty much all I think about vocal fry. Not much. So Steve, difference between these help out, work, and work out. Oh God, so this is. I'm going to say this is a bad question, not in the sense that you asked a bad question, but in the sense that the answer is much more complicated than it would seem. So, okay, we know what help means. We know what work means. There's actually a number of uses of work. Like you can work, go to your job, right? You work at your job, or you can work on a book, right? It's similar idea, but um, one of the problem with phrasal verbs is that phrasal verbs, especially the really, really common ones, tend to have more than one meaning. Work out, off the top of my head, has at least two distinct meanings, probably more. If I remember, I think it actually has three or four meanings. Help out, I'm trying to think if that has a second meaning. It might just have the one meaning. So help and help out. Ooh, this is a good opportunity. I think last week or the week before, I mentioned to you guys how prepositions are usually not fillers, right? Like usually like they're supposed to be there for a reason. And I mentioned that up is a big exception to that because usually most of the times we use up, it's supposed to be there. But if I say, the snow piled to the roof or the snow piled up to the roof, it means the same thing. There's no difference in meaning the up is optional. And there's a reason why we like to add up in particular, and that's part of the logic and how it feels. We don't have to worry about that right now. Up is the most common preposition that does that. Most other prepositions don't, but there are some cases where you might see another preposition like out, because there's actually a very close relationship between up, down, on, off, and out. Okay, up, down, on, off, and out. A very, very close relationship. Like if you can truly feel and understand those five prepositions, that's going to allow you to feel probably half of the entire language. Like it's so critically important, maybe three quarters of the entire language. It's so core to what's going on in the subconscious of an English speaker. But there are some times where, say, out is it doesn't really make a difference because we really like phrasal verbs. We really, really like them. And sometimes we will spontaneously create a phrasal verb that doesn't actually exist to meet a specific situation. Um, and you can develop that ability by learning the logic of prepositions. I have students who started doing that. It doesn't always work, right? But you'll get definitely more of an ability to do that. And people will probably understand what you mean, even if it it's kind of weird. But anyway, with help out, long story short, the out phrasal verb, help out, the out in the phrasal verb, is basically saying the same thing. Like if I say, hey, can you help me? Can you help me out? Now there's a little bit of a different feeling. Very slightly different feeling, but they basically mean the same thing. Why can we use out? That's a whole different discussion based on the logic of out. And I don't really want to get into that here. So for now, just know that the difference between help and help out is really not much. They're basically the same thing. Now, context might be important there. For maybe we wouldn't use the help out version in a particular context, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a context like that. They're the same thing. Work and workout, these are two completely different things. This is where the preposition actually makes a very big difference in the meaning. So work is work, right? Work can also mean function. Like if my computer breaks, I can say my computer is not working. It's not functioning properly. So that's like two meanings of work. Like you work at your job or a machine doesn't work, right? Work out, again, off the top of my head, there's two meanings. One meaning, which is very easy to remember, is exercise, right? And it's really hard to explain why work plus out means exercise. I'm pretty sure I explained that in the book, but I don't remember exactly how I explained it. It's a tricky one. But there's the idea of work, right? You're doing exercise, you're doing physical work, right? And you're using energy, you're putting that energy into the physical work, and you get exercise from it, right? Okay, so that means basically to exercise. Now, it doesn't mean specifically exercise. Like if you go running, you're not working out. So it's a specific form of exercise. Usually, notice I'm doing this, it usually involves weights specifically. If you're doing body weight, like you're doing push-ups and pull-ups, not with like things that you lift, that's also working out, right? Because you're using body weight. So there's that idea there. And then the other meaning of workout off the top of my head is something that, how can I explain that? Like the result was good, right? Like it another way to say it is like it turned out well. You use turn out to mean basically the same thing. So like let's say, I don't know, I'm supposed to meet you at 12 o'clock, but I'm late. I'm running late, right? Because something happened. And so I call you and I say, hey, I'm going to be late. I have to do this thing. So I can be there at 12:30. And you say, oh, that's okay. I was going to call you because I'm running late and I'm not going to be there at 12 either. So I say, oh, okay, so it works out, right? So it's like math because you can work out a math problem, right? To like figure out what's the answer. You work the math and out comes the answer. So, and we use this to mean the result is good. It's convenient, a convenient result that's positive. Like, oh, okay, so we're both late, no problem. So that's the idea there. Again, phrasal verbs are a whole different world. We could talk about that all day, but there you go. Okay, can I reduce the vowel in to and do to a schwa, even if it's followed by a vowel sound? Can you try saying that out loud? Thanks a lot. Yeah, so, well, see, that depends. For do, it depends. If do is a main verb, no. Because do is a main verb, it doesn't get reduced to a schwa. Now, there might be some exceptions in super, super fast speech depending, but it's supposed to be do, right? If it's the helping verb do, like in a question, then basically what happens, the full pronunciation is to and do. The reduced pronunciation is t and duh. And it really just whichever one comes out. It does not matter what's after it. It does not matter at all. The only thing that might affect it is if the next sound, like you're asking here, if it's followed by a vowel, right? I was talking about this with the earlier. You don't have to say the, you don't have to say to, you don't have to say do. You can say the, to, duh, even if it's a vowel. The only thing that the vowel affects is, especially for to and do, well, I'm going to say especially for to, but the only thing that the vowel affects is it makes it more or less likely of if we're going to reduce. There's no rule, there's no right or wrong. Whichever comes out is fine in any case. It does not matter. Unless maybe you're stressing, you're emphasizing, like, do you like it? We're probably not going to say, do you like it? That sounds weird, right? Because we're reducing and stressing. When we stress, we tend to unreduce, right? Because the reduction comes with the reduction is often a byproduct of the unstressed nature of that syllable. So you see these things are tied together. But yeah, so normally, by default, it's going to be reduced to a schwa. Okay. If the next sound is a vowel, that increases the chances that we might use the full pronunciation only for convenience, not because of a special rule, only for convenience, because then we have oo, which is close to w, and we can use the small w linking rule to connect very smoothly into that vowel. But there's no rule that says you have to. Okay, so I can say to understand, to understand, to understand. Okay, or I could say to understand. Nice. I could say, see, trying to think of do followed by a vowel. That's a helping verb do. I can't think of one off the top of my head. And I talked about the earlier, the apple, doesn't matter. Oh yeah, and then I see I answered that anyway. So there you go. I answered it again. But specifically for do, because I wasn't talking about do. I don't think I've talked about that one before, but it's the same idea. Okay, does the ah sound turn into ah like a diphthong before N or M? Yeah, this is a question that keeps coming up. I'm just sure that ah becomes a before ng. That's a variation. There are people who say like thank or bang. I think that's more of a British thing, but there are Americans who do that. Yeah, I say thank, bang, which I think is a lot easier, especially because ah is a commonly difficult sound for non-natives. Even for me, it's difficult to say thank. Like I really have to. It just feels awful. But can ah become ah like a diphthong ah before N or M? I think some teachers say this. Is it possible? Yeah. Should it be that way? No. Like when we say and it's not and we can say it that way, especially if we're being lazy. But or let me use a word that's stressed because and probably will just reduce to n. Let's see. Man. There we go. My brain is slow. So man. Now maybe if I say it really slow, man, you might hear a little bit of an not because I'm moving into the sound, but because I'm bringing my tongue up, and as my tongue shifts, the middle of my tongue is kind of in that schwa position area, but I'm not making a schwa sound. I'm just bringing my tongue up. If I intentionally try to do a schwa and I say man, especially doing that slowly, like nobody would say that. I don't think that's not the word. It's not the word. But if I'm being really lazy and I say like man, then yeah, you can kind of drop into that like drop into be lazy with it. It can happen. It's not supposed to be that way. Man, and man. See the no schwa there. So that's something that I would completely ignore because it causes more problems than not. Because if you do it slowly, it's going to sound weird. Yeah, like if I'm in Germany, I can ask you. Okay, back to the coming and going. I can ask you, when are you coming to Egypt? And when I leave Germany, I can ask you, when I am in Egypt, when are you coming to Germany? Because I expect to be in Germany soon. Yeah, you could. There's no problem with that. It again, it depends on how you're thinking of it. So the standard would be go, right? If you're not in Egypt, you're in Germany. When are you going to Egypt? Um, and then now you're in Egypt, but you're going to be in Germany. You say, when are you going to Germany? Should be go, right? By default, but depending on how you're thinking about it, you can use come. It's the same thing here. Um, English hacks. Oh, hello. I don't know. Sorry, it took me a second to get to you here. Very busy today, as you can see. uh, why people have why do people have another missing do there? Why do people have different tongue positions in the same sound, same country, and same language? Um, well, I'm not going to not answer the question. That's a really, really technical question. It's a good question if you're curious. I mean, linguists ask those questions. It's that can be interesting. I don't think that's particularly useful for actually developing your pronunciation, but um, just as a little side note there. Why do I think that happens? Probably because humans are organic beings that we're not perfect machines, and especially in, say, like the United States, where we might have lots of influence from, like maybe, like for example, my grandma's from New York, which she's still like, she doesn't sound like a New Yorker generally. Um, to me, she sounds generally pretty neutral. She says a couple things a little bit different, um, but I never particularly notice her sounding different. But I notice, for example, when I say the word bag or anything with like ag, she says like bag, like get your bag, and it's I can't do it perfectly, but if I'm not paying attention, sometimes when I do like say bag, I notice that sometimes it'll kind of come out that way. Um, Even though that's not the way I normally speak, because I have sort of that influence. So, like, even just, I could say the same word a million times, and another speaker could say the word a million times, and maybe, 999,000 times we sound exactly the same, but one time we sound different, you know. Um, there's all kinds of possible reasons for that. But excluding influence, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here, but excluding, influence from people around you, um, usually, right, things start to change very small, right, in a very small way usually, and over time, right, like think about, I mean, all languages, of course, but let's make this simple. Old English, which doesn't exist anymore, right, it was a long time ago, eventually turned into Middle English, which also doesn't exist anymore, which eventually turned into Modern English. Okay, and then even in Modern English, Shakespeare, right, who lived what, 500 years ago or something, the way that he spoke is still considered modern English. It's not Middle English. So his English and my English is in the same category, even though we speak completely differently. Um, so, which I would disagree, because I cannot really, it's very difficult for my brain to understand Shakespeare. I hated that in high school. Anyway, that aside, uh, if we go from Old English, it's English, right? It's called Old English, but it was a completely different language, because it's the sounds, of course, the grammar and the words and stuff, things that changes over time too. But the sounds, right, the way that the sounds that Old English speakers used, um, some of them maybe still exist in English today, and some of them maybe don't. And maybe, who knows? Maybe there's some sounds that British speakers use, right, where Old English was originally. Um, Maybe there's some sounds that British people use, or that they don't use, that was in Old English, that maybe Americans now use. Who knows? um, but anyway, like we don't have I think that used to be a sound in English like a long time ago, but we don't have that sound anymore. It's not a sound. So things change over time, and things change over distances. But even in a relatively small country like Britain, right? Not even talking about the whole UK, just like the Britain itself. They have very long history, right? And they have, the educated people who like come from more of like an kings and queens, and there's like, the poor people and whatever. And we have different pronunciations, right? We have like Cockney and we have received pronunciation. And so your status and, what, if you're born into a high status or a low status, that can affect it too. Language is just about communication. And so the exact sounds don't matter as long as you can effectively communicate to somebody what's in here. That's, even me, where I talk a lot about how to sound natural and how to sound neutral and all this stuff. I will agree with the average English teacher that communication is the single most important factor above everything else. If you want to sound natural and sound like a native, that's, an extra bonus that you can go for, which is a perfectly fine goal. I like that goal myself. But you at least want to communicate. You need to communicate, right? So that's probably why. Things change over time. Things change over distance, physical distance. So, okay. Anyway, moving on. Doppelganger. Can you discern the difference between love her and love her? Oh, very good question. Dropping two P's, not O's. You spell drooping. Yeah, it's a different word. Dropping the H in the first example makes it sound like the second word. Same for hate her, sounding like hater. Can you see the difference as a native English speaker? For me, they sound the same. So extremely, extremely, extremely good question. And yes, love her. Okay. Well, no, it's not lover her. It's supposed to be love her, right? Typo there. So love her. If we fully enunciate it, we fully say both words. Love her. I love her. Or I'm putting a little too much on her. I love her. I love her. Okay. I'm getting a little bit of that H there. I love her. At least a little bit. Okay. And that's fine. That's one way to say it. And sometimes it might come out that way, or, if I'm emphasizing her, I love her. Okay. You're going to get a little bit more H there. That's fine. But we have a connection rule. We have a linking rule. Okay. We have a V. The E is silent in love, so that doesn't count. It's just spelling. We have a V, which is a consonant. Consonants always connect to vowels. Well, consonant sounds always connect to vowel sounds. I have to make that very, very clear. Consonant sounds always connect to vowel sounds. Now, you say, well, the H is not a vowel sound. Well, there's a reason why I call it the voiceless vowel, because it's just air. It's just breath. And it usually more or less takes the shape of the vowel sound that's after it. So we have her. I'm already there. I start without voice, and then I add the voice. Okay, her. I love her. Okay. Now, because of this, the H is very weak. It's a very weak sound. And if you fully enunciate the H, some words have a silent H, like our. That's a silent H. There's no H there ever. Okay, don't pronounce that H. But if the H is supposed to be pronounced according to the full, pronunciation of the word, the proper, correct pronunciation of the word, because it's so weak, if there's a way to connect from the previous word to the vowel after the H, especially if the word is not stressed, or if that syllable is not stressed, what will almost always happen, especially in fast speech, is the H just disappears. Okay, so love her will sound like lover. They sound exactly 100% the same. Okay. Same thing with hate her. So here we have, again, same thing with the H I just explained, so we don't have to worry about that. The H we know can potentially drop, maybe. Then we have hate. The E is silent. It's just spelling, so it doesn't count. Then we have the T, right? Now, we know that in American English, a T that is either at the start of an unstressed syllable and surrounded by two vowels, or that is at the end of a word and we connect over to the next vowel, or to a vowel, and there's a vowel sound before it, because if there's a consonant sound, it can sort of block the flapping. It'll still turn into a D, but it'll block the flapping. Well, it might turn into a D. Anyway, doesn't matter. it will flap and connect. So if I say what if, okay, I can't spell, guys, can't do it. I'm just an English teacher. So what if, right? We don't say what if. That sounds British. We say what if, and we flap that D, connect it. What if? What if? Um, Same thing here. Okay, the H is going to disappear because it's very weak. The E is silent, so the T will connect to right? It's like we have this, but it's two separate words. So we just join them, we link them together. And the word hater, here we have the T, like someone who hates, right? A hater, with the T is at the start of an unstressed syllable between two vowel sounds. So that would also become a flap D. And both of these, hate her and hater, are pronounced exactly the same. Exactly the same. So then how do we know the difference? Context. Context and grammar. So if I say, I hate her, that can only mean hate her, because it doesn't make sense to say, I hate her. That sounds like broken English, like I teacher, right? Now, if I say, I am a hater, I am a teacher, okay, now that has to be hater, not hate her, because it doesn't fit the grammar, right? So it's not just the context. Usually the grammar itself will become an obstacle, and it'll make it very, very clear which one we're pronouncing. Okay. So this is a good example where you guys can see how the sound rules and the linking rules actually start to come together, and we'll have cases where a word is pronounced a certain way, but then two words next to each other, if they meet the same requirements as that word does, the middle of that word, you'll get the same pronunciation, right? So we're combining how the sounds work and how the linking works to get the same result. Where are we? Okay. Doppelganger. Okay, good. Matt, do you get praised about the way you speak? I think your voice is really clear and you sound great. I mean, not from other natives, no. It's kind of a funny question to me. Like, do you get praised about the way you speak? Like, it sounds like the question is fine. It's grammatically correct. It sounds funny to me. Um, I have gotten comments from like on this channel or on TikTok of people saying like my voice sounds really nice and it's easy to understand and like uh, I should do ASMR or something, which I didn't even know what that was. I had to look it up. Um, so I mean, from non-natives, I guess, yeah, I've gotten praised in a way. Um, I hate my voice, honestly. I think my voice is ugly. It's a little too high, little bit too nasally. There's a little bit of nasal in my pronunciation, and it is what it is. At the end of the day, I don't really care. But if I had a choice, I would probably have a little bit of a different voice. There's that vocal fry again. Anyway, vocal fry is just like us being really lazy, basically. Like if I had a choice, but I don't. um, so Meadow, when you asked us, do you want me to explain the difference? Watch, see, I thought, okay, not necessary. I know it, but your explanation made almost crystal clear. It sounds like even if we know something, you make us know it better no matter what. Well, thanks. Glad I could help, even if you didn't think you needed the help. um, and I think that might be sort of a common thing with my type of content. It's like part of the reason why, because I think my channel is probably growing relatively quickly. I don't really know. But I mean, it seems like it's been kind of slow compared to how big other channels are. But I think like maybe some of the things I talk about, people are like, yeah, I know that. But then if they actually watch the content, they're like, oh, okay. So then a lot of people just don't watch the content in the first place. Like, I don't know. I think that might happen frequently, but because I even had one of my students, he said like on the surface, which I guess maybe my thumbnails, the little pictures for the videos could be better or something, but he even said like on the surface, like if you just look at the title and the thumbnail and it's like it doesn't seem like a particularly interesting video, but then you go and watch it and you're like, this is amazing. So I wonder if I give that impression to a lot of people that find the channel, which I don't know if I can fix that, but could you explain the meaning of the phrasal verb hold on and the options of how to say it? The pronunciation that intrigues me the most is hold on from the song Unsteady. He dropped the D. Yeah, and heavy from Linkin Park. He said hold on, almost like hold on. Yeah, I'm trying to remember that. Sounds vaguely familiar. I have to listen to the song again. I haven't listened to that song in a long time. But the girl in the same song said it in a different way with a D, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so this is a good question. Again, guys, I really have to make these lessons about the range and flow and quality of sounds because it's actual real American speech. I can't speak for all Englishes, but a lot of this will apply to British English and Australian English as well. It's just how English works, but especially in American speech where we speak kind of lazily compared to a lot of other dialects. Um, there's not just I mean, sometimes there's just one answer in terms of pronunciation, like how to, especially with linking rules. Sometimes there's just one answer, like it does this. But a lot of the time, there's actually more than one possibility based on a number of different things, um, and it's actually really, really complex. Which makes it difficult to learn. And part of my job is to kind of, try to go break it down in the right steps or what I think are the right steps and help you guys understand this. But when I talk about the dynamic range and flow of things, right, sounds disappear, but it's not necessarily a rule that they have to disappear. That's the thing, right? This is why I say there's the full, clear, enunciated way to say it. And then there's maybe, the really unclear, lazy way to say it, which may drop the sound, right? We don't always drop sounds, but that's possible in some cases. And then everything in between. There's other things that might be able to happen. And that sounds really complicated. Usually it's not quite so complicated as it sounds, but sometimes it can be. So um, with hold on, so first the meaning of hold on. It can be applied to a number of different contexts. Physically, which I don't count as a phrasal verb, it's just a verb plus the preposition it uses. Literally, it's you're holding something and you're not letting go. And specifically, this sounds like maybe you're falling, right? Like there's like a cliff. You see this in movies a lot, right? Like somebody is holding on to the edge of a cliff, like a tree branch or the edge, and somebody says, "Hold on." It's like don't let go, just like hold. I'll try to save you. Try to grab you. So that's what it physically, literally means. But we've applied that in a number of ways that are more abstract. And one meaning is wait. It means exactly the same as wait. So you say you're trying to, I don't know, these days, I don't know who uses the operator much anymore, but you're trying to contact somebody, maybe you don't know their number, say, okay, operator, I need this person. And the operator says, hold on, or wait once, or you're trying to schedule an appointment and they need you to wait for a second, they might say, oh, hold on 1 second. Right. So it's just wait 1 second. It's exactly the same. So it's an abstract meaning of hold on. It's like you're holding, right? I ask you a question and I say, okay, hold, pause, wait. And then on is like, it's like a traffic light. It's like the red light, which makes you stop, turns on, right? That light is now on, which makes you stop. Then when the green light turns on and the red light turns off, now you can go again. You don't have to wait. Okay. So it literally, you can think of it as hold or wait is now on like a light. Um, and it has some other possible applications and contexts, but that's fine for now. In terms of the pronunciation, you might even see you described here where you said, okay, in the same song from two different people, right? You heard it pronounced one way and then you heard it pronounced another way. I'm going to tell you that even from the same speaker, even in the same sentence from the same speaker, you might hear two possible different variations because this is part of natural speech. Okay. Not based on rules that have to happen, but based on things that can happen for various reasons, depending on what we're talking about. So, in the case of hold and on, if we very clearly and fully pronounce this, you're going to hear the h, the H sound. You're going to hear the O, which is an L colored O. You're going to hear the D, an actual D sound. And then you're going to hear on. And of course, the D is going to connect to ah because consonants connect to vowels. So you're going to hear hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay. And that's a nice, clear way to say it. It will commonly come out that way because that's how it's supposed to be said. But old, O-L-D, because of how ol works, this is a special thing for ol, the L-colored O. It's I, I don't want to say it's hard to say because for us natives, it's not difficult. But compared to the creation of other sounds, it is a little more complex. It is a little more difficult relatively. And so, especially because in American English, this is a half L, a dark L, where we're not bringing the L up. We're not saying old. If we brought the L up, then the D would not disappear because the D is just right there, right? But because we do that half L, and with that half L, the dark L, we don't bring the tongue up. Well, instead of bringing the tongue up with OLD, we commonly will just be lazy and drop the D, right? Okay. So you'll hear hold on, where the L might then activate paradoxically, right? We're going to drop the D and just do the L now, because that's when the dark L, the half L, it can optionally connect to a vowel. It doesn't have to. We can still keep it as a half L. So you might hear hold on, or we'll still not bring the L up. We'll keep it as a dark L or a half L vowel sound, as I call it, and we'll just flow from that O to ah. So we go hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, wait. Okay, especially in fast speech. Now, if we're speaking more slowly, if I say hold on, that sounds weird. Like, why are you saying it that way? Right? Because speech is one of the things that, in order for us to speak, or not speech, speed, if we're speaking quickly, in order to speak more quickly, we make these little changes or drop little sounds sometimes to make it easier to speak faster. But if you're speaking nice, clearly and enunciated, which sometimes enunciation is a tool. Remember, it's not the normal way we speak. It's a tool that we use to sound more clear if we need to emphasize if we need to. Okay, or if we're just speaking more slowly for some reason, then things that work over here with the fast speed, like dropping certain sounds, isn't necessarily going to work with the slower, more clearly enunciated version. And that makes sense, right? Because if we're speaking more slowly and enunciated, the purpose is for the person to understand more easily. So we're going to bring those sounds back, right? It only makes sense. So it's going to sound weird to slowly say, hold on. Why are you saying it that way? But when we're speaking quickly, it happens so fast. And as I explained, right, the L and the D are already there, but we're probably not going to take the time to bring the L up, so we just drop the D as a consequence, right? That's what's happening in this case. That explains why it can happen. And then you add the speed to it. And the speed, it sounds so similar at that speed that even though we are dropping the D and it doesn't sound exactly the same, it's perfectly acceptable. It's just a fast way to speak. Okay, so you as an English learner, you can't just go dropping whatever sounds you want because it's easier for you and this and that. There are certain reasons why English speakers drop certain sounds in certain places, or why we might, kind of change certain sounds sometimes, or this or that or whatever. And that's part of what you have to learn if you want to sound like a native. Okay. This is why it's easier to just speak clearly, just enunciate everything, but you're gonna sound kind of unclear, or not unclear. You're gonna sound unnatural, right? And potentially, if you over enunciate everything, it can actually make you harder to understand, paradoxically, because that's not the way we speak, right? We don't always speak in a very enunciated way. This is what I'm trying to, communicate to you guys. I need to make lessons on that. I made one for the schwa so far, but in the live streams, I keep mentioning this because these questions you're asking is explained by that range and flow based on the speed, or how clearly or not clearly you're speaking. This is real speech. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Rodrigo, I've sometimes heard an H sound at the beginning of words like where and why. Ah, yeah. What do you think? So I addressed that very briefly in the lesson about the W sound. Um, Basically, there are speakers who still do this. In my experience, most of them are older, like say 50 or 60 plus. My grandpa speaks that way. My grandma does not, as far as I've noticed, but my grandpa does. Um, he's also from California, so it's not a regional thing. Um, in American English, there are some speakers who do this, but most speakers don't do that. What used to be the case in English, and I think British people do this too still. Um, the WH words, right? Anytime you see a WH, the reason why the H is there is because it's supposed to be a voiceless W. Okay, so W is a consonant, right? And it's voiced. There's voice there. Now, what happens if you take that same thing, but you don't add the voice? You just push air out. Okay, so you get who. Now, who is actually special because it's really an H followed by the closing into the oo. So that's actually an exception. It's not who, that would be wrong. Okay, but what, where, why, when, how, of course, doesn't start with a W. But then other words like white, white, like a white piece of paper, white. And again, you will hear some Americans speak like that, but it's very uncommon in my experience. I don't hear even a lot of older people, I don't hear them use that. It's something that I think is disappearing from American English. I don't use it myself. It's just the way that people used to speak, and some people still use it. It's something that you can completely ignore. Completely ignore. If you like how it sounds, go for it. I will note though that some people find it sounds annoying to them. And there's actually, I don't know if you've seen the show Family Guy. There's a specific clip from one of the episodes where Stewie, which he has a bit of a British accent on the show. He's the baby, and so he does this like usually, right? But he's saying, which this is a food thing. It's like a sugary topping that you can put on things. And we say Cool Whip. So it's cool with the L colored oo, cool, and then whip, Cool Whip, Cool Whip. But he says it Cool Whip, Cool Whip. And it's like, I don't think any American would ever say it that way. And so the dog, who can also talk in the show, he's like, why are you saying it that way? And he keeps saying it that way. And so he punches him. But it can sound annoying to many Americans. So if you like the sound, go for it. But I would just ignore it. That's my advice. Yeah, I think in Texas, in some areas, like in the South, I think some speakers have kept that as well. Not all Southern speakers necessarily, but yeah, the South or Texas might be a place where it's a bit more common. I don't know for sure. I just know there are some Americans who use it, but it's most of us I don't think do. Cool, thanks. I heard Carly Fiorina saying those kinds of words that way sometimes. Not sure about where she is from. Okay. Yeah, I wish that was a standard. I wish that was or there was. Standard. I'm learning American pronunciation because I'm into it, but not everyone wants to learn American or British pronunciation since they interact more with foreigners. Yeah. I get that. I don't know though, like especially coming from like an English cultural perspective and most particularly an American cultural perspective, the idea of a standard international English accent would not go well in the English speaking world. It would not, like, that's probably why it doesn't exist because especially Americans, we'd be like, either you're using our speech as the standard or we are going to completely not follow this and disagree with this, just because that's that's how we are. But yeah, English culture in general, like that's not gonna work. Um, so anyway, it is what it is. The good thing, though, on the other side, I mean, it would be easier if there was like a standard international. You're just like, okay, this is the English, right? Um, but at the same time, the trade-off, of course, is that you can kind of pick and choose certain details. So, and that's kind of what I'm doing. The way that I teach you guys is like 99.9% the way I speak. Um, but there's certain little things here and there, like the California O is one way to do the O that still sounds perfectly fine. Um, but that's kind of specific. And if you want to learn the more traditional, like diphthong O, like O, 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 instead of O, 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 right? They sound a little bit different, but in the flow of speech, like they're both O sounds. As long as you get your lips around, it's not going to matter. Um, so you can choose to do the monophthongal California O, which is what I recommend you learn. But if you like the sound of the diphthong O, or that's how someone else taught you, and you're fine with that, it doesn't matter. It's perfectly fine. Now, if you start using certain sounds that are from British English that don't exist in American English, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that, except you won't sound American. So if your goal is to sound American, you don't want to take British sounds, right? So it really depends on what you want. Now, if you like the sound of British English and the sound of American English, and you kind of want to pick some things, now be careful because you might end up confusing people because you might be making sounds that are similar to each other. But um, in general, I mean, you could do that. You could say, this sound a particular way and that sound a particular way, as long as it still sounds either British or American, and you want to do that, you can do that. So, but you won't sound natural. That's the only thing. Still on the subject of hold on, reminds me the used to from pronunciation. We say it differently when we say the verb used alone. Yeah, so well, that's actually is a completely different case. But is a form. Okay, the used to form. Got it. Yeah, that makes more sense. But between hold on and used to, these are two completely different things that are happening. So I'm not sure why it reminds you of it, but yeah, there's something. Oh, because like hold versus hold on, I guess. But yeah, used. Right, it's spelled with an S. It's a Z, and there's a Y sound at the beginning. Used. Okay, and we can stop that D. Which I guess I should capital keep my conventions. Used. No, you can stop it. It's fine. But used. Now, when we say used to, used to, used to, there's a couple things happening there. Notice I'm not saying used to, right? So I'm actually making an S sound instead of a Z sound. The D is disappearing, and the T and two is staying. And as I've said before, usually the effects of linking and sound changes will happen with the flow of the sentence. So it'll be like this word affects that word. But there are some special cases, like of course, where instead of saying of course, we say, or sorry, wait, no. What was that with? Because we were talking about that before. Of course. Of course. Oh, yeah. Wait, no. I'm so confused. Ignore that one. That was related to another thing we were talking about, but have to. Okay. It's supposed to be have with a V, but in this special case, for whatever reason, this isn't something that normally happens. The voiceless T, instead of the voiced V affecting the voiceless T and changing it into a D, which usually happens, in two is a special word. What's happening in this very special case is the voicelessness of the T is actually changing the V into a voiced or voiceless F sound, which is the voiceless version of V. So have to or have to. Same thing with used to, used to. So yeah, there's a number of things that can happen depending on exactly what kind of combinations we're talking about. And some things are special cases where maybe just one or a couple special things use that, and those are easy to remember. Other times, they're kind of more general things that maybe there's two possible linking rules and you can use either one, and it doesn't matter. Like with did you, right? Commonly we'll blend the d and the j into j, or the d and the y into j, did you. But you can also say did you. You can say a d and a y. They're perfectly fine. There's no problem there. So, yeah. Anyway, okay, Lily, I always used British English methods in my ESL courses. Due to the advanced level C1, I still need to complete the proficiency level. Oh, well, there you go. And now you're learning American English, I guess. I don't know. That's cool. Advanced level, very nice. Oh, thanks for letting us know that the H sound at the beginning of WH words can sound annoying. Maybe one more reason to ignore that. Yeah, it makes your life easier. That's my purpose, is to make your life easier. Again, if you like the sound of it, go for it. But some people will think that it's annoying. So, Meadow, some videos on YouTube show that American girls like men who speak with foreign accents like Spanish, French, Italian. Is that true? They also said that British accent is attractive and they find people who speak the British accent smart. Well, there's a special case with British English. As for just general foreign accents, I mean that's a generalization. I mean it's the foreign thing. Like I mean I guess yeah. It's well, let me say specifically, it's the foreign European thing. And there's historical reasons for that because like English comes from Europe, and so like in our collective historical culture, it's kind of a thing, which is part of the British thing too. But yeah, Spanish, French, Italian, uh, these are seen as because they're Latin based languages and they're commonly called Romance, like from Roman or Rome, right? So they're Romance languages, and obviously the word romance, like love, romantic, stuff. It that we use that to mean something different. We kind of mix them here and we say, oh, they're Romance languages. They're languages of love, right? So we mix two meanings of romance. And it can have that perception, but not everybody. Not all girls necessarily find that as like, oh yeah, that's really attractive or hot or whatever. But as a general thing, yeah, I mean, it's a common thing. But it's this sort of foreign factor. Um, with British, it's a little special um, because, as you're very much aware, I'm sure we had a war against Britain, like what 200 something years ago, and I guess more than 200 years ago. Yeah, no, yeah, 200, and I don't even know. I'm just American. I don't know my history. It's over 200 years ago. Um, but we have a special relationship, like psychologically, like subconsciously, with British English, and the perception, like how are British people like with the British, say like the receive Queen's English standard proper pronunciation. How is that interpreted, by the average American? And of course, this is again a blanket statement. It's very general. But there's generally three types of perceptions that we have of British speakers. One is, and it depends on the context. Um, one is smart, one is attractive, and one is arrogant. Arrogant. And I think this comes from our American cultural history. Claiming our independence from the British. So, like me personally, I mean, I guess I'm a guy, I'm not a girl. There are some guys who are like, oh, British accent, that's really, really sexy or whatever. I don't really care much. Um, doesn't affect me. There are lots of girls who like a British accent. That's fine. But depending on the context, like um, you'll notice, I don't know if you've noticed this, but if you watch a lot of action movies, um, you'll notice that commonly, not in every action movie, but a very common thing is that the bad guy will have a British accent, right? So if you haven't noticed that, that's not something that we're not even necessarily really consciously aware of that. It's just like it happens in the movie, and it's like we just kind of assume like it's a weird thing. It's a very deep subconscious thing. We're not logically assuming, of course, the bad guy is going to have a British accent, um, because British people are bad. No, like we don't consciously think that, but we don't question why the bad guy has a British accent. It's very natural for us that he happens to have a British accent. Um, and so when you're watching action movies, try to pay attention to the pronunciation of the bad guy. Again, it's a generalization. There's lots of movies where that's not true, um, but you will see that as a common thing. Or if in a joking way, if with my friends, right, say instead of asking very politely, oh, could you get me a glass of water? Right? I might say something like, now this is my circle of friends. Not all friends do this, but in my circle of friends, um, I might say something like, in a British accent or in an attempted British accent, I'll say, "Get me a glass of water, slave." Because that's how my friends talk to each other, and that's fine. We joke around, but if we do it that way, we make it into a British accent very naturally because there's this part of the American subconscious mind that it's not like we think British people are bad or anything. It's just because of history and this sort of the American Revolution, everything. That's my theory about it. There's this sort of potential perception lurking in the back of our minds that um, the bad guy could be British. Kind of. I guess you could put it that way. The bad guy could be British. Um, it's kind of a weird thing to try to explain because, yeah, we definitely don't dislike British people or anything. But anyway, but yeah, the British accent can also sound very sophisticated. So if you want to sound very intelligent, you might try to speak with a British accent, if you can do it right. So, but again, that sophistication from an American perspective can seem like arrogance. That's part of the thing, right? So it's like, why are you speaking that way? Just speak normal. But anyway, um, okay, so time. Trying to think of when I have to go. I think 5:30 is the latest. We still have time. Okay, so almost like royal or true English. I've heard that too. People saying that British is the real English. Yeah, especially from an American perspective, we hate that. I really, really hate when non-native speakers say things like that because it's like I don't go around saying like for Spanish speakers, I don't go around saying, "Oh, Spain Spanish is real Spanish because it comes from Spain." It's like that would just piss off so many people, like basically like a third of the world, you know, because there's a lot of Spanish speakers in the world, and most of them do not speak Spanish. So it's it's an annoying concept. I get it. Like, okay, yeah, they're the English people, right, from England, and that's where the language originally came from. But like, no. Like even in Britain, there are people who don't speak, the proper way. Like they speak Cockney or some other variation. Um, and it's like that's not wrong. Like that's not bad English. It's a dialect. It's a different way to speak. Um, but people get all like, "Oh, this is the correct proper way," and yeah. Anyway, um, there is no real English. There's just English. Even if, say, you have a Spanish accent, like if you're speaking English, it's English. It's real English. Like it doesn't matter as long as you're communicating. English is English. May not be grammatically correct necessarily. Might according to proper rules might not sound natural depending on how you're using it if you're not a native, but it's still English. Um, So think about accent attractiveness. Russian, Turkish, and Arabic, for example, are not attractive since they are not from Europe. Yeah, so I mentioned that Europe thing because I was thinking, like, I thought of like Asian, and it's not like we don't like Asian accents or anything, but I think like as a generalized like stereotype of like, oh yeah, women like Spanish accent. Um, I haven't heard that for like Asian accents. I'm sure there's plenty of men and women who think an Asian accent is sounds amazing and it's like it's attractive or whatever. But the stereotype seems to be based on more like those romance languages. And I would say, I guess it's not even European, it's just Romance languages in particular, because, or I guess maybe you can extend it a little bit to Eastern Europe, but like German, for example, most Americans hate the sound of German, because they think it sounds angry. And of course, there's historical reasons for that too. Like, we fought World War II, and I think that had an effect on our perception of the language. I personally think that German sounds very strong and powerful and um, whatnot. And I like the sounds of German. A lot of people like it. It's a very harsh sounding language. Like the word eight is pronounced acht, acht, right? It's like it sound from English. It sounds like you're trying to like literally you're trying to spit the word out of your throat, and that's you know very uncomfortable for a lot of American speakers. But I like it. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's cool sounding. So, um, but yeah, as for people from other places, so Russia technically is like part of Europe. um, Kinda. It's like I know it's like it goes over Asia, but it's still like it's like a European culture and it's like attached to Eastern Europe. And so like I don't know. I don't know if it's just me or if it's an American thing. I never really thought like consciously thought of Russia as part of Europe. I just thought like Russia is Russia because it's so big, it's like its own thing. um, Turkish, Arabic, Arabic maybe, but Russian a Russian accent usually sounds very kind of like German. It sounds very rough and very like comrade. I know that's the stereotype comrade, right? They're not communists anymore, but um, comrade, come, we will drink vodka, or something like that. Um, so yeah, there's a little bit different perception of that. Obviously, there was the Cold War between the United States and Russia. We currently have tensions with them. We've had tensions with them, for a while, and so there's also historical conflict there that maybe subconsciously might affect the perception of it. Again, like at least me, like I don't hate anybody. um, people are people as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think most Americans like oh like Russians don't sound good or Russians are stupid. No, it's like it's more of a subconscious thing of like what's attractive culturally. Um, And then, of course, the Middle East, I don't have to bring up. We know that we've had some conflict there as well. Um, that's a whole other thing that we don't have to go into. But yeah, even like from Africa, like maybe some people find an African accent attractive and some people don't. It's not a big general cultural stereotype. So, um, yeah, I don't think he's going to get that. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Um, where were we? Moving on. British accent. Okay, hasn't the R sound? No. uh, for the grammar of hasn't. Um, I think British speakers can do that. American speakers do not. If you're using have in the perfect tenses, he hasn't done it. Perfect, no problem. If you're using have as a main verb, we do not contract has and not. Okay. In fact, we don't say it this way. We're going to say the British accent doesn't have. Okay. So again, don't confuse have as a main verb and have as a helping verb to make the perfect tenses. In American English, they usually don't work the same way, okay, in terms of the contractions. So just like he doesn't like, he doesn't go, he doesn't see, he doesn't have. Okay, same thing. So the British accent doesn't have the R sound at the end of the syllable, whereas in American, the R phoneme is very strong. Absolutely, yes. And this is I have a minimal pair lesson coming talking about that. I did a poll recently. Oh, I don't know who this is. Hold on. Hello. Hello. No. Hello. Yeah, speaking. Oh, that tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, thank you. Bye. All right. Notice how I said that. I said that should be fine. That should be fine. That should be fine. That should be fine. Yeah, that's the speed of a native. Anyway, yeah. So I did a poll recently, asking if people wanted me to make minimal pair lessons between the R-colored vowels and the non-R-colored vowels, like say E or well, you could do E or I in the R color, doesn't matter. But let's say ah and R, right, or eh and air. And in that poll, there was yes, no, or I thought the British and American pronunciations are the same, because I wanted to see how many people would choose that. And most people said yes, but a lot of people said I thought the pronunciations were the same. They're not. And I think that number one, it could just be your ears aren't hearing it. But I know in a lot of the world, for some reason, British English is still the English that is taught. Um, and then you grow up, you're still learning English, you want to learn American English, you decide, and then you don't even realize like your ears are used to the British R at the end of words, and so you don't even hear the American R. But yeah, Francisco is absolutely correct here. We do pronounce our R's, all R's. It's called rhoticization in linguistics. It's a feature of American English. So, doppelganger, what's the difference in intensity between the words very, quite, pretty, and rather, plus adjective to complement something or someone? Okay, good question. Well, rather and quite, sometimes there's an additional um, aspect, which would be formality. Quite and rather can sound a little bit more formal, right? It's not that they are formal, but they can sound a little bit more informal or more formal. And that doesn't mean very and pretty are informal; those are just normal. Um, so keep that in mind as well. But in terms of their level, so if I say I'm very tired, okay, very is going to be strong, right? Like there's tired and there's very tired, right? Quite sounds like hmm, that sounds kind of like between tired and very tired. Like, well, I'm quite tired. You know, I could maybe go a little bit more. I'm not very tired yet, but I'm not just tired. You know, pretty would be probably the same. I'm pretty tired. Interestingly, pretty and quite actually, you can kind of use them to mean a little bit more, a little bit less, which I know is confusing. But that's what I'm feeling here for some reason. It kind of depends on how you say them. Like if you say, or let's say hungry, like, hey, you hungry? Are you ready for dinner? I say, yeah, oh, I'm pretty hungry. Right? It sounds like that almost sounds like very because of the way I'm saying it, like, oh, I'm pretty hungry. But if I say, I'm pretty hungry, right? It sounds like a little bit less than hungry. Like, yeah, I could definitely eat. I don't completely feel hungry, but yeah, there's hunger, right? So sometimes, again, another aspect, the way you say it could affect it. For these types of words, anyway. I don't think this usually happens for words for most words of intensity. And then rather is basically like equal to quite. In like every way, it sounds a little more formal. Um, it maybe sounds like a little bit more than just hungry or just tired. So yeah. Um, oh yeah, and you gave examples here like good. So yeah, rather good, pretty good, very good, quite good. So yeah. I heard from someone, I've been trying to find a way to stop aging from happening, but it's not working. And I'd like to say, oh no, don't worry about that. You're aging. And then I stopped because, oh, I see, because I didn't know. Got it. Context is also important. Um, Remember, like we were talking about earlier, I don't know if you were here, Doppelganger, but um, someone asked about the difference between really and actually. And one of the things I mentioned there was that really has the meaning of like an amplifier, like very is similar to very, um, but it can also mean like not as an amplifier, like if I say this is really happening, like in that case it would be interchangeable with actually, like this is happening now, like I can't believe it, this is real, it's happening. Um, So it has two completely different usages there. Some of these words, depending on the context, they might be a bit different, but uh, here, in this context, obviously this is a potentially touchy thing, especially if you're talking to a woman, right? So if you say you're aging pretty well, that in this context, that sounds like you could be aging better, right? You could be aging better, but it's not bad. So that kind of sounds maybe a little offensive, right? Like you're saying, well, I can kind of tell you're getting old. Yeah. But it's not awful, right? That's what you're saying. If you say quite well, you're aging quite well. That sounds, especially because quite sounds a little bit more formal. Um, that's a standard thing to say. Oh, don't worry about that. You're aging quite well, right? This just sounds good. Like, yeah, you're aging, no problem. People age and you're doing it very well. Good job. Now notice I just said you're doing it very well. So very well would also work there. Rather well, you're aging rather well. That one actually sounds kind of like pretty. It sounds like maybe a little bit more formal way of pretty in this case, or word for pretty. Um, it's like rather well. You're aging rather well. Like could be a little bit better, but yeah. So very and quite, um, with quite probably sounding generally just the most polite, but very also works perfectly fine there. Those would be the two that you would want in that context. Yeah. Um, this is a very high level thing that deals with the shades of meaning. Um, Either like within a particular word or like between certain words in certain contexts. This is where, if you're writing poetry or you're writing like a novel or something and you're describing, the scenery, this is where word choice and stuff becomes very important to convey a certain feeling or scenery and image that the person is seeing in their mind. So it's a very, very high level things that even natives, study if they want to write well or write poetry well, for example. So for English learners, this is a good question, especially for the relativity of intensifiers. Um, but this also gets into like really C1, C2 type territory. It's like especially C2, like upper advanced, bilingual, like that's when you should be worrying about a lot of those details. So that's good. More inclined to pretty, but I heard someone saying that it's used in a sarcastic way. Confusing. You're aging pretty well. Well, we convey sarcasm. I mean, you don't have to use a special tone to convey sarcasm. We can rely on the context. It could be like really obvious, like I'm being sarcastic because of the situation. Um, but usually, if we're being sarcastic, there's going to be some kind of tone to it, which could be a very dry tone, right? Like, say, if the house is on fire, I could be like, "Yay, the house is on fire." Right? I'm being sarcastic, obviously. Um, and there might be a reason why I would say it that way. Or in this case, if I say like, "Yeah, you're aging pretty well," like if I say it that way, it's like pretty well. Like I don't really think you're aging well, but let's just say that. So the exact intonation and maybe how we elongate certain syllables and stuff, um, that usually affects sarcasm and certain other things, or Russian. That just seems to come out of nowhere. I guess that's probably related to what I was saying earlier about the accents. But Brazilian Portuguese speakers tend to put an e at the end of the word, like hot dog. They say, yeah, I know. I've worked with a number of Brazilians. There's also times where Brazilian Portuguese speakers will, like, there's supposed to be an e at the end of the word, like happy, and they won't add the e. It's a very interesting, strange thing. It's like they add it where it shouldn't be, and then they don't say it when it's supposed to be there. um, so, and it is what it is. But yeah, that's a common thing Brazilian Portuguese speakers need to be careful of. Um, yeah, and I know you're writing the IPA and you wrote it in the wrong order. That's okay. I don't care about the IPA. I think it's not a good system for English. Um, I've talked about that before, but I don't think I've made an actual formal lesson about why I don't like the IPA. I'll have to make that. Um, but you'll see in a lot of my lessons, I don't use the IPA symbols. They might be there for reference, just for people who do know them, but I try to use the English Hacks phonetic transcription guide that I've created because the IPA has problems. So, anyway, um, I do have to do something this evening, and it seems like the questions have kind of slowed down. So, I think I'm going to be going soon. Any other last minute questions, comments, whatever? What about Brazilian Portuguese? I don't know. The perception of Brazilian Portuguese, or like with the accent. Um, I assume that's what you're referring to. uh, That's a good question. I don't know if I could speak for all Americans. I like the sound. I like the Brazilian accent in English. I think it sounds cool, especially if they're speaking Spanish and they have a Brazilian accent, like a Portuguese accent. That's like just music. It's like magical music to my ears. I'm just like, this is so amazing. Um, but I think we look pretty favorably upon the Brazilian accent. It might be considered attractive to a lot of people. I'm not aware if that's a big thing, but it seems like it probably would be. Um, so yeah, I guess you can put Portuguese into that as well, especially Brazilian Portuguese. But um, lucky for me, not lucky for me that I didn't say pretty. The person would have misunderstood me. Yeah, and that happens sometimes. If they know you're not a native, I mean, obviously, maybe you'd be like, oh, yeah, sorry, maybe I didn't say that right. You can always sort of backtrack in that type of situation. So, yeah, anything else, guys? Get a little bit here. I have my drink here and I haven't even been drinking it. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing anything else. It might be a little slow. Sometimes it's slow. But I think I'm going to go ahead and go. What are we at? We're at over 3.5 hours. So that's, that's within standard range for how long these things go. So thank you guys very much. And I appreciate the support and the questions. Feel free, of course, as usual, as I said earlier, to leave more questions, comments, whatever. There are no stupid questions. It gives me more content potentially to make. So, yeah, you're welcome, Rodrigo. Everybody have a great week, as Rodrigo says. You're welcome, Meadow. And I will see you guys next week, I guess. Just like last week and the week before. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.